Hello, everyone. So we are back with another episode of Life in Law. And today's episode is going to be a little bit different than usual because I don't have a guest today. It's just me. And I've never done an episode like this without a guest before. So I figured that we'd try something new. And a lot of people had been asking me if I ever have told my whole story and have made an episode where I told my story. And I have gone on other people's podcasts in the past. I went on Slam the Gavel. I went on Karis Project, and I told parts of the story, but it's like every time that I try to get into it, it's like the person interrupts with a question. There will be like not enough time to say everything, or we'll get sidetracked and things like that. So I have been receiving a lot of threats from a lot of people, and there's a lot of going on in my life, and I don't know how much longer I'll be here, to be honest with you. So I have issues with my health. I have severe trauma that I'm dealing with on a daily basis that nobody could even begin to understand, and dealing with constantly being attacked every single day by people that are colluding with my ex, Matthew Lodis, and everybody in his circle that he has basically gotten to go on slander smear campaigns against me to try to take away from my credibility, to try to destroy my reputation, to try to get people not to support me, and to try to just cause me more harm. And that's what they've been doing for, let's say, almost 3 years now, since end of 2023. So there's a lot of things that people don't know about me. There's a lot of false information, slander, defamation. There's a lot of things that are misconstrued and things that people just don't know about my situation. And so even my own children, like there's so much about my story that my children don't even know. And so I'm making this video today to put my story out there, put the truth out there. And for anybody who can relate or can be inspired by hearing my story, please reach out to me. And I'd like anybody who has any questions to also comment, and I'd be happy to answer them. So let's see, where should we? So my parents were never married. When my dad and my mom first met, my mom was a single mom. She had just gotten divorced from a guy who she had an arranged marriage with. And so like my mom was 100% Greek, born and raised in Greece, came to America when she was like 16 or 17. She came to America because her mother passed away, and that was my grandmother. So my grandmother died before I was born, when my mom was like 16. So then my mom and her father, my grandfather, came to United States, and they went to go stay in New Haven, Connecticut, which is where my grandfather's brother, Gus, at the time was living, and his wife was Mina. And so like Gus and Mina already were living out there. And also my grandfather's sister, Maria, and her husband, Steve, were also living out there as well in New Haven. And so my Uncle Gus had a restaurant in New Haven right next to the Owl Shop. They were like best friends with the original owners of the Owl Shop, and they like baptized my brother. And so my mom like came to America, and the intent was she was told that she was going to go to college. But then instead of sending her to college, they just sort of were like, oh, well, you're not smart enough for college, so we don't want you to go to college. There's bad people there, and just work for us in the restaurant. So she started working in the restaurant, and that's it. Like she lived with her dad, my grandfather. She was an only child, and she didn't have any kids or anything like that. She then got set up with this arranged marriage to this Greek guy where like my grandfather knew his father. So it was like the fathers knew each other and was like, okay, I'm going to set you up with my son, with your daughter. And that was like really common arranged marriages. A lot of times people would want to make sure that the people were both Greek Orthodox, that they're the same religion, the same, nationality. And like they wanted to keep people 100% Greek. So even if you didn't know the person, if they came from a good family, then you're expected to marry them if your father made this deal with his father that you're going to marry them. And so basically, she went to Greece, she got married to the guy, Michael, and then they went back to United States together. Soon after going back to United States, she realized that he was a complete like drug addict. My mom had never done drugs in her life. She never smoked pot. She never did anything. And so like then she notices that this guy is like draining their bank accounts and like threatening her if she doesn't pawn her wedding dress and her rings and all that stuff, and like just going crazy, smoking crack, doing who knows what. And like she said that one time he told her they were going to smoke pot together, and that was her only one time in her life that she ever tried it. And she said that she ended up like she took a couple hits and then she woke up in the hospital. Like she blacked out completely. So, something like that was most likely laced. Who knows what he gave her. But, this was her kind of like opinion of that because that was her one and only experience. So, long story short, the guy was insane. She ends up getting pregnant. He tells her, like, he said some crazy fucked up shit. Like he said to her, if it's a boy, I'm going to like sell the child into like human trafficking and like sex trafficking. If it's a girl, I'm going to like sexually abuse her and all this crazy stuff. And so she said he tried to take a fork, tried to threaten to stab her eyeballs out if she didn't pawn her the stuff he wanted her to pawn, like her wedding dress and the ring and all that. And so like she ended up like he like left, went back to Greece. She ended up filing for divorce because she didn't want to like have an abortion or not have the baby or whatever. And so she ended up divorcing him, getting sole custody in the courts in New Haven because he wasn't there. He just didn't file anything or respond. So she just got everything by default. And then she was declared divorced as a single mom with sole custody of my brother. And then like he went back to Greece. He never came back to America. There was a couple times when my brother had like went to go see him, and then like sometime around like 2001 he was shot and killed in a coffee shop in Greece in some drug deal gone bad where he owed somebody money or something like that, and they killed him. So basically like from the years when she was divorced, which was in like 1984 or something like that, 1983, like around there. From then until when I was born, she was just like a single mom, and then she met my dad. And so like when she met my dad, he was doing real estate. And so he had like tons of houses that he would like rent and sell and stuff. And like my mom was looking for an apartment. So she met him because he was like the realtor person. And they started like seeing each other, but he told her that he was single. He didn't tell her that he was actually married. And so like my dad is from Egypt. And so like my mom is talking to this guy and he's saying to her, oh yeah, I'm single, blah, 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 blah. Well, then come to find out later, he ends up bringing his Egyptian wife over from Egypt to America. And then he tells my mom like, oh, well, yes, I am married to this lady, but it's only for citizenship paperwork. I'm only bringing her here to get her papers. And when she gets her papers, then I'm going to divorce her and I'm going to marry you. And so like my mom believed that and like continued to see my dad. So then my dad's wife gets pregnant with their first child. My mom finds out. And she said at first my dad was like lying and saying like, oh yeah, she's just gaining weight or blah, 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 blah. But then like she finds out that she actually was pregnant. So they end up, she's like upset about it, whatever, but he still gives her some excuse and she believes it. So it's like, then my dad has his first child with his wife. And then like a year later, he has his first child with my mom. So it's like he has a daughter with his wife, and then he had a daughter with my mom. And then he got his wife pregnant again, the wife that he was going to divorce. He got her pregnant again a second time. And this time he didn't say anything to my mom until like the baby was actually born. And he said that there was like, they saw diapers. My mom saw like diapers in the back seat of the car or something and confronted him. And then like finally like admitted to it or whatever. And she was like so mad. But again, she knew he was still married. This is his wife. He was basically living with her and like wasn't living with my mom. Like he would come see my mom, but he was still like maintained a home with those people and saw them and stuff like that. So it's like he had daughter with his wife, daughter with my mom. That's my sister. Then son with his wife. And then my mom got pregnant like a bunch of times and had like a bunch of miscarriages and like ectopic pregnancies and stuff like that. And she had like been pregnant multiple times. She lost multiple babies. And then she had like an ectopic pregnancy where basically the baby is developing outside of the uterus. And so there's no way that it can survive. And so basically it ends with the baby doesn't make it. And then like my mom had to have like one of her fallopian tubes removed because of that and had to have this like emergency surgery, and they made mistakes at the doctor and all this stuff. And so she had like one of her tubes removed, and then the other one they told her like she has so much scar tissue that the doctors at Yale told her that it would be physically impossible for her to ever get pregnant again. And they said like, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you can never, ever, ever get pregnant again. It's physically impossible. It will not happen. Don't even waste your time. And so like my mom is like Greek Orthodox, and she like has like a lot of faith. And so she said that then for 3 years, she continued to try to get pregnant. For 3 years, she tried, and she was praying for 3 years. And then after 3 years, after they told her it's impossible, you're sterile, you can't have another kid, she then gets pregnant with me. And so that's why she named me Theodora, because for those of you that don't know, Theodora is a Greek name and it means God's gift. Literally, that's the translation, God's gift. And so usually like Greek people have like these traditions where naming their children, where it's like, oh, you name the first one after the grandfather, and then after the mother, and after this, and after that, whatever it is. Like, so that's what she did with some of the kids, most of the kids, except me, because she said, like, for example, like my sister is named Anastasia. That's after my grandmother. My brother's name is Antonios. That's after my grandfather. I'm not named after anybody. I'm named Theodora because she said that it was like a miracle that she prayed to God that she could get pregnant after the doctors told her you'll never get pregnant. And she prayed and she got pregnant with me 3 years later. So by the time I was born, my grandfather also passed away. He was standing at the bus stop at the corner of Church Street and Chapel Street, right across from the New Haven Green in New Haven, Connecticut, right across from where the federal courthouse is. And he was at the bus stop waiting, and there was other people at the bus stop too. And like all of a sudden a car came and he tried to like cut off a bus, and then he like skipped a curb and he hit his like main artery like under his arm over here, and he like instantly died in a second right there on the sidewalk. And like this was 5 or 6 years before I was born. And so like I never got to meet my grandfather. He was a World War II veteran that was in the fought for Greece, and he also was a photographer. And I only know everything I know from stories that my mom's told me. And so, you know, it's sad that that happened. And so there was a wrongful death lawsuit, and my mom ended up getting a pretty substantial amount of money from that settlement. And so at the time when I was born, we were living inside of a house in Bethany, Connecticut. And this house was really nice. It had a jacuzzi room. It was like completely secluded at the top of a hill. It was like 6,000, 7,000 square feet. I don't know. But the whole point is that this house was purchased with money that my mom had received from this wrongful death settlement. And so what she did was she put down a lot of money as a down payment, but put the mortgage and everything in my dad's name. And my dad said he was going to pay the mortgage every month. And so like at the time, my dad had lots of properties, and like most of them had mortgages, and most of them were like 2-family, 3-families. And so like something had to do with at the time, like something about like with Section 8, like before it was like you would get the money, or I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something where like the money was going directly to the landlord, but then they changed it so that the money would go like to the recipient of whoever's getting this welfare program. So like then it turned into like those people would then take the money and like not pay their rent. And so I don't know if it was welfare or what it was, but my dad apparently started to fall behind on all of his mortgages, and there was many mortgages. And so like a lot of the houses started to go to foreclosure. And one of the mortgages he stopped paying was the house in Bethany that we were living in. And this house was like the home we had. So it was like, you know, at this time, after I was born, my mom, 11 months later, she had my brother, Tony. And like, he was born with Down syndrome. And so like I was 11 months old, not even one. I didn't even get my first birthday before my mom had another baby with special needs. And so it's like, I never got to be the baby. I never got to have that like time to like be the baby and be with my mom and stuff like that. I couldn't even breastfeed after 10 months because the doctor told my mom to just start giving me cow's milk because I can't have any nutrients because the pregnancy takes it all. And so like, you know, it was like literally I was 6 weeks old when my mom got pregnant again. And so me and my brother were like Irish twins or whatever, but it was also like really hard because I was forced to be like super independent from a very young age and take care of myself because my mom was unavailable because she was busy taking care of my brother. And my dad was also not around because he was out doing illegal work and having secret families on the side. So, let's see. And then my sister was born like 3 years after I was. And so she was the last. So my mom had one son with her ex-husband that was an arranged marriage. And then she had 4 kids with my dad. And I'm the second. So out of her 5 kids, I'm the third. And so that makes me the middle child, which means you get ignored, turned into the scapegoat, and treated like shit. And so, yeah, makes it much worse when you get like a special needs child is born before your first birthday and you never get to have your mom take care of you. So anyways, so long story short, we lived in that house. My dad used to like bounce around where he would, you know, stay at the other house with his wife and the other kids in West Haven, where they had like a smaller house. And then like whenever sometimes he'd come see us, he'd come to our house in Bethany, where it was like a nice big house. And like we had like everything and all this stuff. But like my dad was not paying the mortgage. So he would play this game where he would try to go as long as possible without paying the mortgage and just expect that they're not going to like come after you. And sometimes like the bank would take years before they start, before you actually lose the house. So a lot of times there's things you could do to extend it and all these games and tricks and legal loopholes and things like that. And so that's the kind of games he was playing. So he stopped paying the mortgage on the house in Bethany that we lived in. And he didn't tell my mom he stopped paying the mortgage. And so like whenever there would be letters that would come that would be from the bank or something like this, like she would say something to him and he'd be like, oh, don't worry about it. Oh, I'll take care of it. Oh, whatever. And like she was not educated. She never went to college. She was an immigrant that has a very basic level of English even now. And, she doesn't understand how to read like that kind of stuff. So, she just kind of was depending on him for everything. First mistake. Don't ever depend on a man for anything. And so, second mistake, don't ever, if you're going to buy a house, don't ever put it in a man's name if you're putting up your money. Second mistake. Okay. So, sorry if this is a lot, but I figure, I need to get my story out there so that everybody can see, everything that I've been through and to truly like understand where I'm coming from and why I do what I do. So he stopped he stopped paying the mortgage. He didn't tell my mom. He kept saying excuses every time these letters would come from the bank. And eventually they basically sent the sheriff to the front door and told my mom, like, you have 24 hours to vacate the premises. This property is now owned by the bank. You've been given so many like notices and warnings, because like my dad was saying like, oh, don't worry, we'll just tell them that there's a senior citizen living here and they'll give us an extension. But then like when he tried to say some lie like that, they were like, oh, show us verification, show us where their room is, show us this. And like, then they didn't believe it. And then they're just like, nope, no extension. Like we're moving forward with the eviction. And so that's what happens. Like if you lose your house to foreclosure and then you're still living there, they will do an eviction and send people to like forcibly take you out of the house. And so that's basically what happened. We had 24 hours to leave. We didn't leave because again, my dad still said to my mom that we didn't have to. And so imagine having this like big house, 5 kids, all your stuff, and then like you have 24 hours to get out. And so then when this happened, I was like 4 years old. So the sheriff came, it was this big, huge thing. They destroyed everything. My mom said they told the people, the movers that the town hired to go in and to empty everything out of the house. And so they brought these like storage things trailer things where they like just threw all of our stuff in there. They stole gold. They stole a lot of like valuables and things like that. Like my mom had like gold and stuff that was for all of us, like from the day we were born, and things like she wouldn't let us wear it when we were like little, but she was like saving it for when we were older. And like my entire stash of gold got cleared out. And I think also like my brothers or something. And then, a lot of things were destroyed and damaged, like pictures, like priceless sentimental things. My mom had like fish tanks in the walls, like built into the walls, fish tanks with like nice Pacific Ocean fish, like exotic fish. She said that they went in there and started smashing it and breaking the glass to kill all the fish and empty it. And I said to her, why did they do that? And she said, because they told them to empty everything out. And they told my mom, if you step foot inside the house, you'll be arrested for trespassing. You don't live here anymore. And then they said like, my sister was outside and it was like March. My sister was outside just in nothing but a diaper. Then they called DCF. DCF came right to the house right then and there, wanted to then go see our schools, go see our doctors, go do all this on the same day. And then they took all of our stuff out of the house in these trailers and left them in this like old field that used to be an airport in Bethany. And it was like unlocked. And then apparently like people allegedly went there and stole stuff and everything like that. And so like then like we had some stuff where we put in like these other storages that we were renting, but that stuff would get like eaten up by mice and like damaged, and there was no like climate control, and it stayed in there for years and years. So like basically like I went from having like a home with like everything you could ever want and a nice house and like everything, to overnight being forcibly evicted without notice or expecting that or preparation, and having to go into a homeless shelter. And so I was 4 years old. Then we went to a homeless shelter, which was the Salvation Army in Waterbury. And this was in, I want to say like 1996 and 95, 96. And no, it was 96. And we stayed there. I don't remember how long, week, something like that. And I remember like they had like a common area where there was like TV and stuff. And then they had these like areas where people would sleep. And there was these like metal style like bunk beds, almost like jail cell kind of. And like I have the vivid memories of being in that homeless shelter. Like I remember waking up in the morning and having to stand in line to get breakfast, where it's like we would take our bowl and choose which kind of cereal we wanted, and then the person would serve it to you and give it to you, and you go sit down and eat it. And then like, you know, just you just picked whatever what they had. You didn't get to complain or nothing. And it was just like I'll never forget being there. And even though that was 30 years ago, like those memories are like imprinted in my mind. And so then from that homeless shelter, we stayed there for a little while. And then my great aunt, who I used to call Yaya, which is grandma in Greek, because my real grandma died when I wasn't born yet. So I never had a grandma. But my grandfather's sister, because my grandfather also died before I was born, my grandfather's sister, Maria, she was like my Yaya. So we stayed at her house in like her basement, which was like unfinished and like really scary, like a dungeon. We stayed there for like a few days, and then she couldn't keep us anymore because who's going to keep 5 kids and a mom? So then we finally were able to rent an apartment, which was like some like terrible apartment in some house that was like a 3-family or something like that, 4-family in West Haven. And like my dad helped my mom find the place. And so we started living there, renting that place out. And I was still 4 years old at the time. And so then at this point, I started getting sexually abused by my older half brother, who was the one who was from my mom's first marriage with the Greek guy. And so like I remember the first time that it happened, it was in the house in West Haven, and my mom was actually home, and she was actually in the kitchen making grilled cheese sandwiches, and I was in the other room with my brother. And so he took me into this like cellar area, and all of this was happening right under my mom's nose, and she had no idea. But I was told that I'm not allowed to say anything. And I was 4 years old when the abuse started, and my brother was 13. He's 9 years older. And so he knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew exactly that what he was doing was wrong, because he made sure to do it in a sneaky way. And so that started when I was 4, and then it's continued. And a lot of times, like if my mom would leave, if she would go work, if she would go do this, go do that, we were being left with him as our babysitter, because why would she pay for a babysitter when she has a 13-year-old that she can have be the babysitter? And so like it turned into like me being sexually abused when she wasn't there. And then I was the one who had to take care of my younger 2 brother and sister, while the older ones did whatever they wanted and abused us and bullied us. And my older sister was also physically abusive, and she was very crazy. She would bite me, she would hit me, she would attack me, she'd say mean things to me all the time, bully me at school with her friends and stuff like that. So We stayed in West Haven for a little while. Then we moved to an apartment in New Haven. And when we were in there, it was another like ghetto, roach infested, disgusting apartment. And we stayed there for a little while. And like during all this time, my mom was still like using a different address to try to like keep my like older siblings in the same schools. And like at the time, like I hadn't started kindergarten yet or anything. So it's like didn't matter for me, but for them, she wanted them to keep going to the schools in Bethany. She didn't want them to go to the New Haven schools. So we stayed there for a little while. And then eventually she was able to get a rental in Bethany, which is where she wanted to go to be with the schools. And this place was like the guest house of another house. And like the people like sometimes lived in the other house, but it was like they had inherited that from family and like they were never there. So it was like basically like nobody even lived in the other house, and like the guest house was just being rented out. They wanted to keep the main house for themselves like when they did come. So we rented that house. We moved in when I was like 5, and we stayed there until I was like 10, 9 or 10. And that house was in Bethany. It was on Johnson Road. And so, you know, living there, it was like very much like rural, kind of like people have horses and cows and farm animals. And, you know, you could literally like lay down in the road and lay down on the street and a car will never come. And so you know, I had a lot of fun with my friends. There was a girl, my friend Cassie, that she moved there across the street, and the people she moved in with were actually foster parents for her and her siblings from Florida. And so like, you know, one day all of a sudden kids moved in and I was like, oh, now there's friends. And so like we had a lot of fun like over the years. Like I used to walk over to her house, she'd walk over to mine. We did all this normal fun kid stuff in the 90s. And at the same time, during all that, I was being sexually abused almost every day, whether my mom was home or not. And like, it got to the point where it was such a normal part of my life where I didn't question it. I didn't think it was unusual. It was like basically something that I felt like was just my life. Like there was nothing in my mind that said like, oh, well, maybe this is wrong or something like that, because it had been happening so much through all my formative years. So then when I was like probably around like 8, like 7, 8, you know, around there, like I started to like learn more stuff and like started to feel like, okay, this is wrong and things like that. And like by the time that I was 9 and he turned 18, the abuse stopped. And so when I was 10, I tried to first tell my mom for the first time. And I remember like I used to beg to go to work with my mom. My mom used to work as a waitress because never went to college, never had an education. And so she worked as a waitress because that's the only thing she ever had experience doing. And I used to like beg to go with her, and what would like sit, and it was like when they had smoking section and non-smoking of the restaurant, but like the whole restaurant smells like smoke. And I would literally sit at the bar with like Vietnam vet dude that would sit there and tell me all these stories about combat and all this crazy stuff. And I was literally like a kid. And then the dude would like drink wine the whole time and like smoke cigarettes. And I'm just sitting there like breathing in secondhand smoke, like talking to these regulars. My mom would tell me, what do you want to eat? And order me dinner from the restaurant. And I would sit there with her, wait for her to get done with work. She would go in at like 4 or 5 and she would finish at like 10 p.m. That she'd have to close the restaurant, clean, vacuum. And I'd sit there and wait until she was done every time. And I would rather do that and sit there at the bar, do my homework, eat, listen to crazy people, and breathe in smoke all night rather than be home and be tortured and abused more. And so like, I used to like, I loved going to school. School was like a safety place for me. I liked to go anywhere that wasn't home. Home was like a prison. And so I couldn't tell my mom because I was told not to say anything and I was afraid. And my brother was like 350 pounds and I was like tiny. So anyways, one night I was at work with her and I waited until she was done, till she was closing. And there were some customers there that kept talking to her at the end of the night. And they kept going on and on and on, asking her about my brother, asking her how he's doing. And at the time he had just started going to college at like Mitchell College, and then he went to Quinnipiac, and she's over here like praising him, saying how he's such a good person, he's such a good kid, and oh, da, 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 da. And like sitting there and listening to this literally like was like eating me up inside. Like I couldn't sit there and listen to this anymore. So like on the ride home, I said to my mom, like, I want to tell you something. And in the car on the way home, and it's only like a 10-minute drive, I told her like that what he had done to me. And she's like, oh no, how can this be true? No, this isn't true, blah, blah, blah. And then like we go home and then she's like told me to go in my room. Cause again, like at the time we had a 2-bedroom. So at this point we weren't living in that little apartment that was like the guest house anymore. Cause that person said they wanted to have family rented out. So they like didn't renew our lease. So then we stayed in like these apartments in Naugatuck for a little while, which were also completely infested with roaches, where they would like crawl out of the light, they would crawl out of the outlets. I had an alarm that was a battery operated. I opened it one day and roaches came out, like 100 of them. It was the most traumatic thing ever. And so like it was like that when we moved in. Like we never had that in the house in Bethany. So it was just insane. And then we ended up getting another rental in Woodbridge. And so like if you live in Connecticut and you live in like Bethany, Orange, or Woodbridge, you go to Amity High School. Or, you know, there's an Amity Middle School in Bethany where Bethany and Woodbridge kids go. And then there's the Amity Middle School in Orange where just Orange kids go. And so like my mom really wanted us to go to Amity because she said it was one of the best public schools and that she wanted us to be able to have a good education because that was important to her. And that's something that helped me a lot in life, was getting an education, because I saw everything she went through living as somebody who was uneducated. And so let's see. So we were in that house and it was a 2-bedroom house and it had like 2 bedrooms upstairs and then like a bathroom upstairs, a bathroom downstairs. And so, you know, my mom said that she promised my older sister that she could have her own bedroom. So even though there was 3 girls and 2 boys and my mom, she made it so downstairs in the living room, my mom would sleep on the couch. Upstairs in one of the bedrooms, my older sister got to have her own bedroom because my mom promised her she gets to have her own room one day. And in the second bedroom was my older brother, me, my younger sister, and the younger brother with Down syndrome. So 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls in one bedroom. And in the other bedroom, 1 girl by herself to make sure the princess gets what she wants. Well, I have to be forced to be in a room with the person who abuses me. And he was also physically abusive. Like if he would come home angry, come home from work or whatever, and he would see like, you know, my brother Tony, like he had Down syndrome. He's severely mentally retarded. People like to use that word all the time. Well, that word is what you would describe somebody who has mental retardation, and they can regress. They can do things like be potty trained and then regress. They can go through trauma and revert into earlier childlike states. And my brother would make progress and then regress. And he was not getting the services that he needed. And one of the things that I would spend a lot of my time taking care of my brother, like my brother Tony, like I was taking care of him more than anybody else was. And when I left the house, he severely declined. So anyways, he was potty trained, but sometimes he would have accidents, which means he would poop on the floor or pee on the floor and things like that. And again, he has Down syndrome. He's not able to understand. He has like the brain and mental capacity of like a 2-year-old. And so sometimes like my brother would come home and see like my Tony pooped on the floor or peed on the floor or whatever. And so what he would do is like, if he saw that, he would take his face and shove it in his own like shit. Like he would shove my brother's face in his own piss and shit to punish him, teach him a lesson, or whatever the hell he thought he was doing. Similarly to how some people might do to a dog, for instance. And if you ask me, even doing that to a dog is cruel. And I'm not sure if that's even something that dog trainers would advise, but I see that as cruel. Okay. So this is what I would witness: physical abuse all the time and like chaos. Like it'd be Christmas. There wasn't a Christmas that went by without somebody smashing and destroying and knocking down the Christmas tree on purpose because they're mad. Whether it was my dad, my brother, my mom, whoever it was, okay? I would see shit get broken. I would see people would hit each other. And also, one time my brother was mad at me and he took a plastic lawn chair and threw it at my face. And my nose got busted and started bleeding everywhere. And so, again, my mom didn't care that he like could break my nose or do any of this stuff to my other brother or anything, no matter what, because he was helping her pay the bills. So again, money talks, right? So we dealt with that. And so the day that I told my mom about the abuse, we go back to the house. And again, it's like, he's living there. What am I supposed to do? Go in the same bedroom again at night with him? And so like my mom said that like she tells me to go upstairs. I go upstairs. Then I hear like commotion downstairs. I go to like sneak and look and what's going on. I see him in the first floor window where there's no fall. Like it's literally like on the same level as the ground. So you can jump out of that window and land on grass and you're not going to get hurt. He's got half of his 350-pound body out of the first floor window saying he's going to kill himself because she must have confronted him about what I asked. So then she decided to tell me to go pack up my shit. And then I'm going to go to my yaya's house for a week because this just so happened to also be like the vacation week from school where like we had no school for a week. And so she's like, go pack your shit, brings me to my yaya's house, drops me off there and leaves and like dumped me there. She came a couple times during the week to leave food there for me where she literally left the food on the front door and didn't even say hi to me or nothing. And then when the week was over, she picked me up, brought me back home and acted like nothing ever happened. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're just going to like brush this under the rug, pretend this never happened and go on with our lives. And so like then my brother, who at the time he never had a girlfriend, he never got married. He would work since he was like 13, 14, saving up all his money and all this stuff. But then if you don't have a girlfriend to spend it on, you don't have any life really, you're just going to spend it all elsewhere. So he would use money as like a manipulation to try to like buy my silence, where like every time if it was like my birthday or Christmas or any type of special occasion, he would buy like not just me, but like everybody, like laptops, digital cameras. Like one time I put a thing on my computer on my background screen saying that I really want this Tiffany's necklace, the heart one that everyone used to always have. I said, a bracelet or necklace. I don't remember. I think it was a bracelet. And I put like the picture of it on my background saying, I wish I could have this for Christmas. When Christmas came that year, I had a box that was from him. It was a giant box, like this big. I opened it and inside was another box. And inside was another box, another box, another box, another box, until you get to the very, very end. And then there was a box and it had the Tiffany's bracelet in it. And it wasn't brand new, actually. It was a used one that was bought from eBay that came with scratches on it. But for me, growing up poor, like never having anything, it was like better than nothing. But again, it just didn't feel right to continue to get these gifts because it seemed like they were just coming at the price of my silence. So anyways, I started to really feel uncomfortable, and I felt like nobody cared and nobody could understand like what I was dealing with. I felt like trapped. I'm forced to live in the same house as him, in the same room as him. My mom won't protect me. Everybody's just acting like everything is normal, and inside I'm like dying. And so then like I was around, like when I first told my mom, like the abuse happened from the age of 4 to 9. I first told my mom at the age of 10. By the age of 12, it had been 2 years of this buying gifts and all this to everybody pretending this never happened. And I was continuing to struggle like with my mental health. I was dealing with depression, and stuff like that. And so then like by the time I was 12, like I was probably like borderline overweight. I was like eating a lot of like overly processed food, junk food, like eating as a comfort mechanism, and things like that, where it was like nobody was giving us healthy foods, nobody was having us exercise. So it was just like sitting home all day watching TV, eating while my mom's at work. And then I went to the doctor, and she was like, "Oh, you're pretty much like on the line of being overweight and da 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 da." And so then she's like, "Oh, you maybe you could lose a few pounds, but I wouldn't start making yourself throw up or anything like that." And like I had never even thought about making myself throw up. I didn't even think that was a thing until the doctor put the idea in my head. Because when she said that to me, the first thing I did then was go home and do that. And so then I started into having severe eating disorders where I was like anorexic and bulimic. I would not eat anything all day. And then anytime I did eat, I would make myself throw up. And I started losing a lot of weight. And everybody was like, "Oh my God, you look good. You're losing weight." Like, then I went to summer camp one summer, and it was this like sleepaway camp in like New Hampshire or something. And the counselors and the other girls were like, they would get ready for like a night that they did an activity or like a dance or whatever it was. And like, they'd all do their makeup and do their hair. And like my sister was always mean to me. Like she never wanted to like show me how to do that stuff. And so like I used to wear glasses and didn't have contacts, and I just felt so like insecure about myself. I was gaining weight. I just felt like I didn't know how to like feel pretty at all or like do any of that. And so the counselors were like showing me how to wear eyeliner, like how to put it in the waterline, like, which now I feel like I just have been doing all these years. And it's like, even if I don't wear any makeup at all, if I just have a little eyeliner, I feel like okay. But something as simple as that can like make such a big difference in like your confidence and things like that. So like learning how to do my makeup, learning how to do my hair, things like that. And at the same time, I started losing weight. And so it's like everybody's telling me, "Oh my God, you look so good. You look so good. You look so good." Until they stopped saying you look so good. And they're like, "Are you okay? You look sick. Like, are you okay? What's going on?" Because then it's like you start to look yellow and your skin's all messed up and you stop getting your period and all this stuff happens. And it's like, I was probably got down to at my lowest weight, like 108 pounds. And so I continued to struggle with this eating disorder stuff. Like it started when I was like 12. And I would say it continued in a bad way until I was like around 14, 15. Before that, it was like I couldn't stop doing it. I was like, it was almost like an addiction. And it just like took over my life where I didn't care if I died or not. Like I just, even if I was so skinny, I just wanted to lose more weight. And like my mom, she took me to this church, St. Irene Cristovalantu in Astoria, New York. And she wanted to do what they call like a kama, which is like sometimes you'll leave like something as like a sacrifice, or like you'll do a candle or something where you ask the saint to like intervene on your behalf and ask for a miracle. And like she asked for a miracle for me to be healed from this eating disorder stuff. And like that was when I was like around like 13. By the time I was like 14 or so, it phased out a little bit. By the time I was like 15, 16, it was like totally out. And like now I still have sometimes like issues with like body image where I'll like obsess about my weight and like weigh myself every day and like feel bad about myself if I gain a pound or whatever. And like I'm short, like I'm 5'3" and a quarter. So like a couple pounds on me shows up, like, and so some of these things still like remain, these thoughts and these negative like things I think about myself, but every day is a struggle, and I've came a long way. And so all this was happening. I was also like cutting myself. I was extremely depressed. I was like crying for help. And like if I would like cut myself or do all this, like my mom would just like call 911 and like try to send me to like the psych ward. And so like there was like all these times where she would call 911 and say like, oh, she's gonna kill herself or she's cut herself or this and that. And then they'd send me to Yale, and I was always under 18. They'd send me there. They'd be like, oh, are you gonna kill yourself? And I'd be like, no. And they'd be like, okay, we're sending you home. Every time. If you said yes, you're gonna kill yourself, then they admit you into the psych ward. If you say no, they just send you home every time. And so like I quickly figured this out, like that even if I felt like I was going to, that I'm not gonna say that because then I'm gonna get locked in the psych ward. And so like I never was admitted. Every time she'd send me to the emergency room, they'd be like, okay, you don't belong here. And they'd ask me like, what's going on? I'd be like, oh, I was sexually abused. I was this, that, and I'm having a hard time. And they're like, wow, like, no, that's understandable. No, you don't belong here. And so it's like trying to like say that somebody has an issue because they're having a normal reaction to normal abuse is victim blaming. And so my mom just wanted to like get rid of me. Like she just like no matter what my brother did, she wouldn't call the cops. But no matter what I did, she would call the cops every single time, and 911, and try to get me in jail or arrested or in a psych ward. And so I just felt like my mom like never loved me like or anything. And like, this is how it continued for years. And then like then by the time I was like 13, we moved to another house in Woodbridge, except this time we bought the house. And again, it was purchased in my dad's name. Guess my mom didn't learn a lesson the first time, but she also didn't have any money to buy it in her own name. So she had no choice but to have it be in his. So my dad said he would buy this house in Woodbridge. He would pay the mortgage, which was $3,000 a month, for a small 3-bedroom house, 2-bathroom. And that's what it was. That's what it was. So he was paying the mortgage for like a year. And so it was like at this house, I finally had my own bedroom. And that was supposed to be like, I think, to make up for the fact that I was forced into sleeping with another room with everybody else for all those years. But my room was tiny, but I had my own room. So like I felt good about that. My mom, once again, slept on the couch. The other bedroom was for my brother, my older and younger brother, and the second bedroom was for my 2 sisters. So that was the living arrangement in that house. And again, at the time, my brother, the older one, was going to school at Quinnipiac University and was getting ready to graduate. And so like he was like a senior at Quinnipiac and also worked. And then like my sister was also like getting ready to finish high school and stuff like that. And like, then my younger sister was really young, and then my brother with Downs, and then me. So like when we moved into this house in Woodbridge, I was pretty much in, I want to say like, it was like my freshman year. It was like right before freshman year. So I was like, let's see, like freshman year, I was 14. So I was like 13, 14, almost. Okay. So sorry, it's just a lot. Okay, so I don't even remember what I was saying. Okay, yes, about the house. So I was a freshman. We had that year, and towards the end of freshman year, at this point, I had turned 14. And my mom was still continuing to try to call the cops on me all the time, try to get me arrested, all that stuff. Very bad relationship with her, like very bad. And my dad had said that, like, even though he wasn't going to be living in this house in Woodbridge, that he said that he was going to pay the $3,000 a month mortgage so that we could live there. And so even though he was living elsewhere, he was paying the mortgage every single month until he didn't anymore. And so, like, towards the end of that year, my dad's like, oh, I'm going to stop paying the mortgage. And he's like, I'm going to, he's like, I don't care. You can pay the mortgage yourself or you could go on the street. And like, we had already been thrown out on the street before from him not paying the mortgage. It was a very real possibility that this would happen again because my mom had no money or ability to take over that mortgage and afford it because she was working as a waitress where her average money was like $40 a day, which is literally like on a good day if she was lucky. And so he's just basically like to my mom, I don't care. You guys could go live on the street. I'm not going to pay the mortgage anymore. And that's it. And so, like, at the time, my brother, who had like just graduated from college, had money saved that he was going to go move to New York City to get an apartment with his other friend. And they were going to split an apartment in New York and go live there. And so instead of taking all the money he had saved to go move, he took all that money instead and decided to put it towards taking over the mortgage so that instead of us losing the house that was in my dad's name, that now it was going to be in my brother's name, and he was going to take over all the mortgage payments so that we wouldn't lose the house. And so you'd think, oh, wow, that's so nice of him. Now we don't have to be homeless. And like, of course, that was my mom's argument. Like, oh, you should be grateful. You should be thankful. Okay. But in my mind, I was like, I can't wait for him to go to New York. I can't wait for him to leave. I can't wait for him to be out of here so I don't have to see him physically abuse my younger brother, so I don't have to deal with his psychotic anger problems. Now, once I found out that no, not only is he not leaving, but now he owns the house, he controls everything. And then he started saying, oh, I'm going to make this design of how we're going to do an addition. And he used these computer programs where he's like creating additions and saying, this is what your new bedroom is going to look like. And this is what this is going to look like, and blah, blah, blah. So now I'm starting to get flashbacks. I'm starting to get nightmares. I'm starting to really feel like really uncomfortable and having like a lot of symptoms because it's like the abuser is now permanently here and controlling it all. And now it's his house, okay, instead of leaving. And so I wasn't handling it well. And so then I continued to have issues. Then this was like the summer of like 2006. I had just finished my freshman year of high school. And I started high school in 2005 to 2006. And I finished in 2009. So I was like, my summers consisted of like staying home in the house that had no AC, never getting to go anywhere, never getting to do anything, having to be stuck home all fucking day. Now, one day, my mom was sitting outside in the driveway in her car with the AC on because there was no AC in the house and she wanted to sit in the AC. So she went in the car and put the AC on. And she had my brother in the car who had Down syndrome. Now, my brother who had Down syndrome at the time was like close to 300 pounds, really heavy, extremely strong. He had thrown TVs at me before and literally threw TVs right at my face. Like, he was mad because I changed the channel. Like, he's extremely, extremely strong and much bigger than me. Now, I went outside and again, I was 14. I was a child. My brain wasn't fully developed and I'm not proud of this. However, I'm going to be honest about the situation is that I went outside and my mom and brother were in the car and he was in the back seat and she was in the front. And he was like laying down across like the back seats. And like, he's like fully nonverbal And again, like if you make him mad, he'll like attack you. So I went into the car and I had saved like my own money. And like I wanted to try to eat healthy at the time. I was still like full blown into this like anorexia stuff where I wanted to only eat like ice cream if it was like sugar free or fat free. And I was at the time buying all these crazy things that like got taken off the market for being like dangerous. But at the time they were on the market, whereas like all these diet this, diet that, all this crazy stuff. And this is the only thing I wanted to eat. So I said, I went outside and I said to her, like, please, can you drive me to Stop and Shop? If anybody knows where my mom's house is, you know that you can literally walk to Stop and Shop from her house. But you have to go down a really long, a steep hill and then go up a big hill. I said, can you please take me to Stop and Shop? I want to buy something with my own money, please. Well, she turns around and says, no, I'm not bringing you there. And so like, again, I'm already feeling like trapped. I'm already feeling like, I can't believe this. Like I'm stuck in this house and it's like, I can't walk there. It's going to be too much. Like I'm so exhausted, whatever. I have no energy for this. So I was angry. Like, and so I took it out on my brother, which was wrong. And I shouldn't have done that, but I didn't even hurt him. I opened the door in the back and I like grabbed his arm and just like yanked it a little bit. And again, he's like twice as big as me, 3 times as strong as me. He barely even budged or moved, not even put a scratch on him. But then he's all crying. So then she's like, oh, okay, that's it. I'm going to put you in jail. So then she calls the Woodbridge Police Department. If you know anything about the Woodbridge Police Department in Woodbridge, Connecticut, you know that they call it Hood Bridge because they'll literally like send out like a whole squad if you go out like 1 mile over the speed limit and it's like there's no crime. So the cops are like really like intense. Like they'll send out like 10 cops or like every call. So she calls the cops. Again, I'm 14. All I did was yank his arm a little bit. Didn't even leave a scratch. Nothing. Okay, he was fine. I just wanted to like get her attention and she was ignoring me. And so I just felt like this is a way to get her attention, even though it's wrong, right? So then after that, she's like, I'm calling the cops. I'm going to put you in jail. So then I was really upset. I go into the garage where I had a treadmill and I just start running on the treadmill to try to like get stress out. Come out of the garage, cops are outside. They're like, oh, come with us. Okay, go with us. Okay. They're like, what happened? And like, I'm trying to tell them what happened, whatever. We walk up to the top of the driveway. My mom is standing there with like 3 other cops. And I'm walking up to hill of the driveway with the other ones. And she's like, gives me this smirk. Like, she like looks at me like, like a smirk, like, ha ha ha, you're about to get locked up. And like, I was so mad. I was literally so angry. And so I walked up right in front of the cops and I said, like, I looked at my mom. I said, I love how you'll call the I said, I love how you'll call the cops on me for barely even putting a scratch on Tony, but you'll let your other son rape me for all these years and you do absolutely nothing. Well, her jaw literally dropped to the floor when I said that. She never, ever, ever, ever thought I would say that, ever. Not in front of the cops. The cops were like, okay, you're coming with us. They literally told me like, let's go, and put me in their car. And again, I was 14, no parent, no lawyer. They told me, let's go from my house where she called them to say to arrest me. So on the way to the police station, the police officer has me in like this like cop SUV or something. And he goes, listen, you know, whatever you did to your brother is not serious and you might get a little ticket for that or something, but whatever you said about your other brother is serious. So we're going to need to go back to the station and I'm going to need to have a statement from you. And so I'm like, okay. So we go in the station and it's like, you know, I don't know, multiple cops are asking me questions where it's like, they want to like ask questions while they're like typing something or whatever, as I'm like verbally telling them things, but they're asking me like the most graphically detailed questions you can imagine. even when I'm telling them like, I don't know, or I don't remember this or that, they're like forcing me to answer these questions. And so like, it was like very like invasive. Then after like hours of being like interrogated, they then discover that this abuse never happened in Woodbridge, that it happened in West Haven, and then in New Haven, and then in Bethany. And there was even times when it happened in the car, even crossing state lines, but that didn't even get brought up. As soon as they knew that there was 3 other towns in Connecticut and not the one that I was making the report to, they said, okay, well, you have 2 options. They're like, we can't even take this in because it didn't happen in our town. But you can either go make again the same invasive statement to, Bethany and West Haven and New Haven, or you can just go straight to state police, which actually was what handles Bethany is state police, because they don't have their own police department. It's like troop, whatever. So they're like, if you can go one time to the state police and give a statement, then you won't have to go 3 more times to the other ones. The state police will just handle it. So I was like, okay. So then they're like, all right, well, now they're like, we'll contact the state police. We'll have them reach out to you and see what your next steps are. But for now, you're all set here. You can go ahead and call your mom to come pick you up. And like, at the time, I was 14. I actually was going to be 15 in a few months from there. And I was like, okay, I had no phone. Maybe I had a phone, but it wasn't like the phones now, and I didn't have it with me. And so I had no car, no license, no nothing. They're like, okay, call your mom to come get you. Because like they picked me up from my mom. So they're like, call her, come get you now. You're done. Okay. I used a little phone at the police department, call my mom, like, hi, can you come get me from the police station? And she says to me, fuck you. You tried to put my kid in jail. And she hung up. Now keep in mind, just a few hours before this, she said to me, I'm going to put you in jail, calls the cops and sends them to come arrest me. Okay. And then when they take me to the station and I say, it's time to come pick me up, she says, fuck you. You tried to put my kid in jail, and hung up the phone. I tried to put her kid in jail. Her kid? Who's her kid? What about me? Am I her kid? Apparently not. Okay. And so like, even though that was 20 years ago, I'm still cry about that all the time. The other day, I couldn't even talk about it without crying because it hurts. And it hurts because she thinks it's fine. She says, just get over it. Get over what? So imagine you like are like 14, you're at the police station, you are all by yourself, and your mom hangs up in your face and says, fuck you, you tried to put my kid in jail, I'm not picking you up. Okay. So I didn't tell that to the cops. I'm like, just tried to call her again. Doesn't answer. I call like 5 times in a row, doesn't answer. The cops are like, so is she coming? And I'm like, she's not answering. And they're like, well, call her again. Keep calling. Doesn't answer. The cops are like, I'm like, well, she's not answering. I don't know what to do. So, sorry. So the cops are like, where's your dad? Do you have a dad? I said, again, remember, my dad was the same dad who told us, go fuck yourself and live on the street. I'm not going to pay the mortgage anymore, which is why my brother had to take over the mortgage. I hadn't seen or spoken to my dad in like over a year. And he didn't make any attempts to see or speak to me. So it's like, my dad had a phone number that never changed. And everybody knew that number because he picked the easiest number in the book that ends in 1234. So I'm like, let me try to call him, because that number would go right to his cell phone too. And he answered, and I was just like, told him briefly, like, something happened with the police station, this and that, da da da. And he was just like, is this really true? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, can you please come get me? And he's like, okay. Cause like the cops told me that if my father won't come get me, that they're going to have to put me in DCF foster care. So my dad came, picked me up, took me with him. I stayed with him at his office, which was in East Haven, where he had like a house that he basically built a wall and like rented the back half of it. And then in the front half, he had like his bedroom in the back. And then he had like his office in the front with like a bathroom with like a shower. And then he had like a porch in the front porch. And he like basically turned the porch into a kitchen. So like when I came there, he had an air mattress in the kitchen that used to be a porch and said I could live there. So at this point, you know, I was still 14. And it was like really messed up. Like the conditions of that porch, the thing, like it was not proper at all. I think DCF came, they said that it wasn't proper for me to stay with him. And then I ended up going back to my mom's for a little bit. Then when I was at my mom's, my brother left. He was staying at my other great aunt, Mina. She was staying at her house and she decided to like let him like stay there temporarily. But then he hired a lawyer and the lawyer told him that it's his house and he's allowed to be there and I'm not. So then even though I was a minor, he demanded that I leave his house. And because of that, I had to leave and go back with my dad. And so like at the time, like DCF was involved. I think they assigned a GAL for me because like, you know, whatever that, like, then I was with my dad and like, I went back to East Haven and then he put me in another house in West Haven. And so like during that time, like before I ended up staying at my mom's still when after I turned 15 in September that year, I still stayed there. It wasn't until after he got arrested that he said to kick me out. So like I went to the police in like the summer of 2006. I made the statement to the state police afterwards because like they said to me, oh, you have to go to the state police. And like, so it's a little bit confusing because like the day that my mom left me at the police station, that was when I was 14. I immediately left with my dad. I was with him temporarily. And then I turned 15. Then I went back to my mom's and I was like staying there. And then my brother left. And like, so, and then it was like he came back at one point and I was still there while he was, but I just wouldn't talk to him or anything. And so it was like a really weird, messed up situation for a while after that. And a lot of hostility with my family. And my mom was trying to bribe me. She's like, oh, how much money do you want to not go to the state police? And I was like, I don't want money. I want to be believed. I want like to feel safe. I don't want to have to live like this anymore. And so I refused to take any other hush money. And she took me to the state police and she told them that she's not supporting me, that she doesn't believe me, that she's not going to participate at all. And so the two like detectives had a laptop. They had me come to the state police and they asked me all these questions, all these invasive questions. Like they asked me things that based on my answers revealed to them that I clearly couldn't tell the difference between certain things, that I was very naive and I was very like ignorant about a lot of the stuff that I later learned. So at the end, they told me like, okay, we're going to go over this with you and we'll have you sign it. My mom wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. She told them she doesn't support me. She was mean during the whole process. She was very protective of my brother and did absolutely nothing to support or protect me. She was mad that I was reporting her son, even though I was the victim and I'm her child too. She basically disowned me and considered that I was bad. So I had no support. And then that was like in 2006. by the next year, they were still doing an investigation. So like I said, then I was like back at my mom's, back here, back there, jumping around to place, and I was still going to the same school. And then in 2007, that year, again, I was still living there, the same situation. He was still there and stuff like that. And we were just ignoring each other and all that stuff. And it stayed like that for like a while until Christmas Eve of 2007. The state police, left a message on the voicemail saying that they had a warrant for his arrest and that he has to come turn himself in. And at the time, he was away on vacation. He was on like a vacation in like another country. And I called my mom because she was working at the restaurant. And I was like, oh, they left a voicemail saying he has a warrant for his arrest. And she goes, oh, thanks for the Christmas present. Again, blaming me for the fact that he was getting arrested for what he did. So then once he got arrested and turned himself in, he then quickly got a lawyer. And that's when the lawyer said, no, she has to leave. So it was like, even though I temporarily went with my dad and like DCF said I couldn't go there anymore, whatever, like then DCF was okay with me going back with my mom's, but not talking to my brother and not like interacting with him and just minding my own business and like avoiding him, which was like so weird that they would even allow that. And then once he got a lawyer and got arrested, he was charged with like risk of injury to a minor, unlawful restraint, sexual assault, all these charges. And the lawyer said, oh no, it's your house. She has to leave. So like, you know, I then was forced to leave. And then that's when my dad put me in an apartment in West Haven, which was on First Avenue, and it was another like 3-family, like there was 20 people living in the apartment underneath. That was only supposed to be like 2 people. And the apartment had no heat, no hot water, no food, no nothing. It was like, it wasn't even finished. Like it couldn't be rented. But this is where he had me living. And so, you know, it was very difficult for me. At the time, I was 15, 16. I didn't have a car yet. I didn't have anything. So it was just like really difficult. And so I was living there. And then I started dating a guy who was extremely abusive. He used to literally beat the shit out of me all the time. And so then like we started getting arrested because like Connecticut had all these crazy DV laws where they would say like, you know, if there's a verbal argument, both people are getting arrested no matter what. And then you're automatically getting a protective orders put on you. And then if you get arrested again, we're going to up the protective order to no contact. So now you guys can't contact each other at all, no matter what. And so like that, then I started getting involved with him and these people and all that. And like, I was like, dealing with so much trauma. I had no support from my family, all this stuff. I got thrown out of my house for reporting that I was being sexually abused. And then like everybody's taking the side of the abuser and abandoning me. And like, I did nothing wrong. It's like the only person that was there for me was the guy I was dating. And he was so abusive. Like, you know what I mean? Like he was like very physically abusive to me. And so it was hard because like, you know, started dating him when I was 15 and like we were dating on and off for like 6 years. Like that's how long it took me to like walk away from it. And like, you know, dealing with the domestic violence, getting arrested, all this stuff, getting charged as an adult, having criminal cases. I ended up going to prison twice at the age of 17 because of all of these arrests. And it would be like, oh, we would argue, neighbors would call the cops, then they'd arrest us both, then they'd put protective orders. Then we'd argue again, neighbors would call the cops. Now they're saying we violated the protective order. Now they're no contact. Argue again, neighbors call the cops. Oh, now we violated it again. Oh, we're hanging out together. There's a no contact, but we both want to hang out. Doesn't matter, charging us with felonies. Every time you violate the protective order, it's a felony. And so I remember one time I got arrested and him and I were driving and the cop pulled us over and knew who we were in Woodbridge, arrested us both, said it was like $250 to get out. I get out, I go to court in New Haven, and the judge goes, "Oh, you violated this protective order 3 times. You don't respect court order. I'm going to teach you a lesson. I'm raising your bond to $25,000 cash only, and you're going to be released in 5 days from now. Or you can pay 25,000 cash and you don't get the money back and you get out now." And so like my dad came with me that day and I was like, "Oh, what if they raise my bond?" He's like, "Don't worry, I'll get you out." As soon as they said 25,000 cash only, my dad left. He didn't even say nothing. I was in the lockup and I had some public defender. I was like, "Is my dad going to help me get out?" And she's like, "Oh, he left." I'm like, "Oh, great." Who the hell is going to pay 25,000 to get out when you could get out for free in 5 days? They was like, "Nope, you're out. Just sit there for 5 days." And that was like torture because they sent me directly from court to York Correctional Institute in Niantic, Connecticut, which is the only women's prison in the state of Connecticut. And for the first like 2 weeks that you're there, you have to go in the medical unit, which at the time meant being inside of a cell with 3 other people. That's like a 6x8 cell that has 2 bunk beds, a toilet, a sink, and a shower. And your bed is right here and the toilet's right here. And there's no door, there's no privacy, there's no nothing. You're in that dungeon for the first 2 weeks for 23 and a half hours per day. Okay. So if there's 24 hours in a day, you're only out of the cell for 30 minutes a day. The other 23.5 hours of the day, you're in the cell. You don't see the light of day. There's no window. There's no mirror. There's nothing. And the food they give you is poison. It's just terrible. Like if you want medical attention, you have to fill out a card that says like, "I'm requesting this medical attention." And then they get back to you within like 5 to 7 business days, which equals to like 2 weeks. So if you're like dying, like too bad. Like people have been found dead. There's people who gave birth in their cells and the baby came out in the toilet, all this crazy stuff. So like, yeah, there's big human rights issues going on over there. And so for the judge to put me at 14 years old, I'm sorry, at 17 years old at the prison like that was insane. And like, at the same time, like I said, like the end of 2007, I was 16. That's when he got arrested, turned himself in. By the January of 2009, that's when I went to prison for 5 days for violating that protective order. So I was put in on such a high cash bond. I did 5 days in prison. I came out. A couple weeks later, my brother has his trial. And so keep in mind, like this whole time since he was arrested for the whole like year and a half that it took for the case to go to trial, he's saying like, "Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty." But they're having me come every couple weeks to go meet with the prosecutor, the state's attorney. And usually like my mom's supposed to go with me, but she said, "I'm not supporting you. I don't want anything to do with this." So I used to go by myself. And like, as soon as I was like 16 and I was able to get like a car and a license, I was like driving, I was getting a job. Like I could have been living on my own completely at 16, but technically I was under my dad's custody, but he just left me to do my own thing. So I used to go to the prosecutor by myself. And every time he would say like, "What do you want to see happen in this case? You're the victim. What do you want to see happen?" And I said, "Whatever it is, I don't want jail time to be part of the sentence." And like, he clearly didn't like that answer. Like he kept trying to push me towards doing jail time. And he's like, "Well, here's the book of all the charges and all the potential sentences. And we want to take into consideration your wishes as the victim and blah, blah, blah." And I was like, well, if he goes to jail, then everyone else that lives in my house is going to be homeless because he's paying the mortgage. So I don't want him to go to jail. I just want justice. I just want to be recognized that I was not telling, that I wasn't lying. And I want him to be acknowledged. And he was like, he couldn't believe that I was saying this. And so they kept trying to push me for like a harsher sentence. And I was like, no jail. So they offered him a plea deal, 5 years probation. It was like 5 years probation, 5 years suspended sentence. He said no. So even though that was like a great deal, he still said no. Because if you know anything about like sexual abuse cases, it's like, if there is no DNA evidence, if there's no camera footage, if there's no evidence other than the witness's statement, then that witness can testify at trial. And then it's like the jury is going to determine, is the witness credible or not? So like, if your only witness is the victim and the victim doesn't show up because the victim is too scared, threatened, intimidated, paid off, or too weak, or can't face their abuser in court, which many times a lot of these people bank on that. And that's why a lot of times they don't even take the case to trial if they don't have that witness that's willing to competently testify. And so they were banking on me not showing up. They were banking on me not being competent. They were banking on me being unstable because they saw that I was getting arrested. I was going to prison. I was doing this. I was hanging out with bad people. I was ruining my life. And, I was still in school getting straight A's. I was still in honors and AP classes and all that stuff and excelling in everything without even trying. And they're looking at me as like, I'm never going to be able to show up to this trial. So on the day of the trial, I go, and my older sister was there to support my brother. He had his lawyer. I had my GAL that they gave me, who was actually nice to me. She was actually a good person. And it turns out that as soon as my brother saw that I was there at the trial and like ready to testify and not scared, he saw me on the other side of the door, overheard me talking to the GAL about how I'm applying to colleges and all this stuff. Because at this point, I was 17. I was a senior in high school. And as soon as he saw I was like there and ready to testify, he told his lawyer he wants to cancel the trial. And so the trial on the first day was canceled at his request because he decided to take the plea deal. So he did that because he knew that he would go to jail if I testified, because they knew that my statement 3 years later would match the exact statement word for word, because I have a photographic memory. All these things from all this trauma like stays in my head. Like I remember so many things and details that most people won't. And so it's like my story just stays the same. And that's how you know someone's telling the truth, because if their story stays the same, they're telling the truth, no matter how many years go by. So I was like, okay, now what? So then the state's attorney like takes me into his office, because like I had to miss school that day to like show up to the trial. And I'm like over here, like the school is giving me a hard time. They're telling me I can't graduate because I have so many absences. But the reason I have so many absences is because I would have to drive from East Haven to Woodbridge every day, bring myself to school, and go in rush hour traffic on the Q Bridge. And they had a stupid rule, but if you're more than 10 minutes late, you get marked absent. And I only needed one class to graduate, which was English. And I was only allowed to have 8 absences, and I had 42, because that's how many times she marked me absent for being late. And so I was like, if she's going to mark me absent for being late, I'm not even going to show up. Like if I'm going to be late, I'll just skip this class and come to the next one, because why would I go if I'm going to be marked absent? And why would I even sit there? Then forget it. Like, you're going to mark me absent anyways. If I'm going to be more than 10 minutes late, I'm not showing up. And that's what I started doing. And so then they were like, oh, because I only needed one class to graduate. And so like I had like a study hall in first period and like a study hall in the last one. So then they're like, okay, we'll make a deal. If you stop doing study hall in the last period and start going to another English class and do all the work for that class and finish all the work, we'll give you credit and let you graduate. But you're not allowed to go to prom. So I'm like, okay, was not allowed to go to prom, whatever. And at least they're going to let me graduate. And so it's like, I went through so much, like with the school, everything. So like they didn't think of, and so like that day at the trial, the state's attorney's like, you have to come. And I'm like, well, you better give me a note, because my school is going to be mad, blah, blah, blah. He's like, don't worry, I'll give you a note. So after the thing like was over, we go in his office and I'm like worried about getting my note and all that stuff. And he's like, oh, I just want to tell you like how proud of you. And I think that you're like definitely like amazing and this and that. And he's like, I just wanted to tell you something. He's like, I didn't want to tell you this before, but I'm going to tell you it now that it's over. He says, if he was found guilty, it would have been 10 years in prison. And he said that to me because I kept saying like, I don't want him to do prison time. I don't want him to do prison time. And he didn't want me to know that a 10-year prison sentence was on the table prior to the trial starting, because if I knew, maybe I wouldn't testify, or maybe I would hold back or something, because I didn't want him to go to jail. So he didn't tell me that, but we didn't even need to do the trial because as soon as my brother saw I was there, he pled guilty and admitted to the crime. And so if you're innocent, why are you going to cancel your trial when the witness shows up? Because you're scared, because you know you're not innocent and you know that what you did was wrong. And so after that, like I still had a messed up relationship with my mom and my sisters and everybody in my family who just like turned their back on me. And these people would then like, you know, even after he pled guilty and was convicted felon and everything, they still would be like, my mom would be like, oh, well, he can't get a job with his college degree. How is he supposed to get a job when he has a record because of you? And like all this stuff. And then they would say like, oh, you're allowed to go to your mom's for Christmas for 2 hours if he leaves. And it's like, okay, what is this? Like a 2-hour visit? This is a joke. Like I did it like once and then I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. So it turned into like never being with my family on the holidays. Like everybody would have like for Easter and Christmas and all this and baptisms and this and that. They wouldn't even tell me the plans. Like, or the plans would be so vague that you just know that they're not telling you because they don't want you to know. Like, oh, well, oh, I can't help you on Friday. Why not? Oh, I just can't. Translates to, oh no, I have a family party with everybody and you're not invited. Or like, I would be at church and my mom would be like talking to like somebody else that's like a distant relative. And they'd be like, so when are you going to Greece? And I'm like, you're going to Greece? Like, you didn't tell me that. And so it's like, I'm always like never told anything that's happening, even like with the Christmases, the Easters, all that stuff. Like they would do all these things without me and not invite me. And then like, even when I had kids, they wouldn't invite my kids. So it was like, I was like completely like ostracized from my family. And like, even though there was one point where I went back to my mom's until I got really kicked out by my brother, I was still like supporting myself, taking care of myself and working and all that. And then once like I was out of that house, I was like literally 15 years old, 15, 16, living in my own apartment, having to fend for myself with, and like my dad had me an apartment that had no food, no hot water, no nothing. And the cops showed up one day after me and that boyfriend got in an argument and he left and wouldn't bring me to school. And I was like crying outside. Cops like, oh, I want to walk you inside to make sure you're okay. We go inside. And she calls DCF, she calls more cops, she calls my parents. She's like, oh, the cop says to my dad, he's like, I wouldn't even let my cat step foot in here. And you have your daughter living here. And they condemned the apartment, said it was not inhabitable by humans. It was condemned. And then they forced me to go to DCF foster care. And so I went to DCF foster care and I was there for like a week or so. And then I like ran away from the foster home. I told the boyfriend I had at the time to bring me to the DCF headquarters after school. And I demanded that they let me go stay at my great aunt's house rather than go back to the foster home. And they're like, no, we're not going to do that. And I was like, well, if you make me go back to the foster home, I'm going to literally kill myself. And they're like, well, we're supposed to send you to the hospital for saying that, this and that. And I was like, go ahead. I was like, you could send me all you want. And then I'm going to tell them I'm not going to. And then I'm going to go home and I'm going to do it. And you're going to rest on your conscience. And saying this all to them because I was like desperate to get the fuck out of there. So they're like, fine, we'll do an emergency home visit of your great aunt's house and see if it's acceptable. Went there, saw it was clean and nice. Let me stay there. They said I could stay with my great aunt until my dad fixed the apartment and made it inhabitable and fixed all the code violations and everything. So then I ended up going back to the West Haven apartment. I stayed there for a while. And then the school said that I had to live in Woodbridge if I was going to continue to go to school. So then I went to, my dad had an apartment, like a condo in Woodbridge where he had like 2 different sides, like a duplex, and both of them were rented out. Well, he told the people on the left side that he was going to take their porch in the back of their kitchen and put up a wall and turn the porch into like a room for me, which is basically the size of a jail cell that had a stand-up shower, toilet, air mattress, and sink. And I don't even think it had a fridge. There was no fridge or nothing. And that's where I had to live. And then like, he told me to like basically live there or whatever. And then once I was in the second semester of my senior year in high school, they had a rule where you're allowed to live anywhere. You don't have to live in the district. So then I moved to East Haven, and that's where my dad had me in the porch initially. But then at this point in high school, when I moved back to East Haven, the back part of the house was vacant. Nobody was living there. So because no one was living there, he said I could live there. So I got to have this like apartment in the back where my dad's office and his room was in the front and had its own entrance. And I had my own entrance in the back, and it had like a bathroom downstairs, living room, kitchen. And then upstairs, there was like a bedroom and then like another illegal kind of bedroom with no windows or nothing. And so I was like, okay, this is great. I'm going to live here. And like, I would drive to school, be late, all that stuff, whatever. So I was living like that. My dad was still technically taking care of me. I was 17. I told you guys how in January of 2009, when I was 17, I went to prison for 5 days for violating the protective order. And then the trial for my brother happened where he called it off, pled guilty, whatever. So then June of 2009, I graduate high school from Amity. Again, they let me graduate because I did their stupid extra English bullshit class that they wanted me to do to make up the only credit I needed out of all those classes I was taking for nothing. So, like I said, my dad, like he was never like supporting us financially. Like, even though he would make like a substantial amount of money, it was always like doing like fraud and like illegal stuff. And like, he was also very greedy. Like, he would make millions of dollars and he would take my mom to court to fight to pay her 25 a week per kid in child support. And that's all he ever paid, including from my brother who was special needs. And so it's like, my mom would like try to like show proof that he was making millions. And then he'd be like, oh no. And then like he'd print fake pay stubs from his own company and like get some lawyer, and like my mom would always lose. And so he never supported us. He never paid for anything. And so he told me, he's like, listen, as soon as you turn 18, I'm renting out this place to somebody else. So be aware that either you're going to start paying rent or I'm renting it to other people. So I was like, okay, whatever. So then I graduate high school and my mom was like, why don't you invite your dad? Because maybe he'll give you a present. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, she would always be like telling us to ask him for money and stuff. And like, he wouldn't like that. And like, he would never do it. So it was just like, why putting us in that position? So I'm like, whatever, maybe he's going to come. Meanwhile, my friends are having parents giving them keys to the trust fund, cars, vacations to Europe, everything, $100,000 on a check. They're getting all these gifts. And I'm like, okay, maybe my dad will give me something. I asked him to come. It's like, oh, I'm not coming. He said he was going to come to the graduation, but he didn't come. So then at the end of the graduation, I wanted to go to Pepe's Pizza in New Haven. And at the time, that was like one of my favorite restaurants. Back in the day, it used to be really good. And it was like me, my sister, my mom, and like the guy I was dating and like his cousin. So it was like 5 people, like literally, and my dad. So like my dad didn't come to the graduation, but he said he was going to come to the dinner at Pepe's. So we go there. He came in his own car. The rest of us went in my mom's. And like the whole time he's like bitching about like the cost and the price. And like, again, this guy has got millions of dollars. And so like, to put it in perspective, at the time he had like 30 different properties across the state of Connecticut, which he was collecting $3,000 to $6,000 a month in rents from. So, he said he was going to come. And like, he literally, I remember he ordered 3 large pizzas. And at the time in 2009, each pizza was almost $20. We didn't get any sodas or nothing. We literally got water and 3 pizzas for like 5 people. And this was my high school graduation dinner. Okay. The bill came. It was like $60. He starts freaking out. What the fuck is this shit? Oh, this is too much. Blah, 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 blah. He throws $60 on the table, no tip, nothing. Throws literally $60 cash. And says, okay, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. Gets up, goes to the bathroom, allegedly. And then like next thing you know, like 10 minutes go by, 15 minutes go by. I'm like, where is he? I'm like, did he leave? And like, I go to like see like if like he's in the parking lot, and he's in his car, like backing out, getting ready to leave. And I was like, I tried to go up to his window and be like, are you really leaving? Like without giving me a gift or anything? And like, he just literally like almost hit me with his car by backing up as fast as he could and then took off. And I was like, wow, what a piece of shit. He just ruined my graduation. Wow, this sucks. Okay. I felt terrible. I really did. Especially because like I knew and was able to see like how much everyone else was getting gifted from their families. And also like that's one of the things that sucks when you're like the poorest child in one of the richest schools, where it's like, you know, Amity's up there in New Haven County as being one of the more wealthier schools. And it's like, you know, you go to school with kids that got a lot of money and you have nothing, it hurts. And then you see like your dad who has money that doesn't give it to you and is cruel and doesn't even feed you or nothing, it hurts. So I was really upset. Anyways, I took those leftovers from the pizza home. And like I said, at the time, like I was living in the back side of the apartment that he said I can stay until I turn 18. He was in the front. And so I go home and like he had his own fridge. His fridge was constantly filled like to the brim with like the most expensive food you can imagine. Like so much stuff. Like he would go to Restaurant Depot to do his grocery shopping. Like he would buy like rabbit and like all these like expensive things and like crazy foods and like spend the most money on himself, but like starve me and not give me food. So like I had like no money, no food. And he at first, when I first was under his like care, he used to say to me like, okay, once a week you'll meet me at ShopRite and we'll go grocery shopping and I'll buy you groceries for the week. But like it turned into like where I would say like he wouldn't say like, oh, your limit is $100, buy what you want. He would be like, no, you can only buy items that are on sale. But I'm like, I don't want this item. I'd rather buy something else that's not on sale. Like, and it just made no sense where it's like, if it's not on sale, you can't buy it. So then I'm like, this is fucking bullshit. Just tell me how much money I can have and give me the money every week and I'll go by myself. So his budget for me to have food as his daughter was $10 a day for 3 meals. So like that averages to like a little more than $3 per meal per day. So once a week, he would give me $70. And that $70 was for $10 a day for my 3 meals a day to eat. So he wouldn't give me any food, but he'd give me $70 a week. So I would end up not even using most of that money for food. I would like try to like eat like cheap stuff at like McDonald's, things like that. I'd use money for gas because I had to get to school every day. He wouldn't bring me to school. I had to drive myself, all that stuff. So like I was broke all the time. And I had to learn how to like survive with nothing, which is like another thing where it's like, okay, even though my dad was like terrible, like he literally taught me how to like survive with nothing by depriving me of everything. So like I was like, okay, the day I was supposed to get the food was like every Tuesday or every Wednesday or whatever day it was that we said. So like I graduated high school. He did that whole thing at Pepe's, embarrassed me, was really mean, and didn't give me anything, not even a single dollar as a gift. So next day, it was the day that the food money was due. Again, there's no food in my house, only the pizza from the day before. I go to his door. I went to like his apartment, walked over to the front of the building, go inside. I'm like, okay, hi, can I please have my food money? he's like, no. And like, he's Egyptian. So he's like, no, this is going to change now. This is new now. Now, no more food money. And so it's like, okay, no more food money. What the fuck does that mean? Like, I'm still 17. I'm still under your custody. You have to take care of me. You can't just not feed me. That's neglect. Like, I'm hungry. I'm starving. Please give me food. Like, he's like, nope. From now on, things are going to change. If you want food, you can go work. You can go get a job and no more food money anymore. And you can go get a job and you're not going to work for me. Because in the past, I had been able to work for him where he would say, oh, you want to work? I'll put you on the clock. I'll pay you $10 an hour, whatever it is, cash, and you do whatever I tell you. So it's like a lot of times if I had no money, I could call him and say, oh, can I come work? Like, and like, he always had worked for me. And so he's like, no, you're not going to work for me. Go get a job, this and that. No food for you. right after he did that at the graduation. So I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I was like so pissed. Like I was extremely angry. Like you have no idea how angry I was. Like, and again, I was 17. I wasn't thinking right. I was a child. So go back to my house. I had the pizza in the fridge, and then in the freezer, I had my dad, like if he had, because he had his own fridge, but like if there was too much stuff in his fridge and his freezer where he had no room in his fridge or freezer, he would take like the extra stuff that he bought that wouldn't fit in his and like put it in my freezer. So like in my freezer, there was these like whole fish that was like the head and everything, these like frozen fish, like big ones, like four of them. And I'm not going to eat those fucking fish with fish heads and shit. He's got those in there because there's no room in his freezer because it's too packed. So he put them in my freezer while he's not giving me food. And so I'm so mad. So I literally, it was like July, it was June. So I take the fish heads out of the freezer. And like he used to keep, like he was always had like a piece of shit car, like a Geo Prism that was all beat up. He had it outside of the house and he had like his windows cracked. You could easily just stick your hand in and unlock the whole car. I go in, open the car. I put the fish heads inside so they could start rotting in the heat. I then take the pizza, leftover pizza. I smear it all over his windshield, all over the glass, all sauce everywhere. Then I find whatever I could find. I found transmission fluid. I start dumping it all over his seats. I found anything I could find, destroying his car. But it's a piece of shit car anyways, right? He doesn't give a fuck. Then I called DCF. I said, I'm 17 years old. My father is supposed to be taking care of me. He's told me he's not going to feed me anymore. I have no money, no food. I'm hungry. I don't know what to do. Okay. My dad then I leave. I see that he had one of his workers like clean the mess from his car. And that's it. He just had the worker clean it and that was it, right? Then like 3 days later, DCF called my dad and they were like, oh, your daughter said you're not feeding her, blah, blah, blah. So my dad gets so mad. He's like angry that I called DCF on him. So to retaliate, he calls the police and he says to the police, the East Haven Police Department, he lies to the police and says to them that he watched me trash his car and that he saw me do it. Because if you know anything about writing statements, if you say that you saw something happen and write a statement, that's enough to get the person arrested. If you say it happened, but I didn't have it on camera, I don't know if they did it, I didn't observe that happen, that's not enough. Okay. So he lied to the police, told them that he saw me do it, which he didn't fucking see shit. And then he told them that this happened and that he didn't arrest, didn't say anything until now. So then I'm like at my house with like my friends. And next thing you know, the cops come in and arrest me. They take me to the police station in East Haven and they're like, oh, your bond is $1,000. Cause all my friends like, what's the bond? What's the bond? We'll get you out. And like, if there was a bondsman, they could have got me out for like $80. If you wanted to pay the whole bond, you get out for that amount, but you get your money back at the end of the case if you don't run away. So like the bond was 1,000. I could have paid like 80 to get out with a bondsman and not get the money back. My dad shows up at the police department and pays the whole 1,000. And then the police put on conditions of release saying that in order to leave, I had to have a full protective order where I can't go back to the house, even though I have my own entrance and everything, because it's my dad's house and he lives there too. I had a no contact order and stay away from him and all that because he's the victim. They didn't let me go home. So I had to like sleep in my car, be homeless, all this stuff. Anyways, so then I end up, like I said, I got arrested. They charged me with like some bullshit charge, like breach of peace or like criminal mischief or some shit. And then it was such a low bond, $1,000. He pays up the whole money to get me out, knowing that he'll get the money back at the end of the case. And then he said he did that to teach me a lesson. So then I end up going to court a couple times. I think I had a lawyer. And then I end up, like basically, all right. So The way that this happened is just so insane, honestly. Like, by the time I get arrested, it's like July, almost like end of June of 2009. By July, like a few weeks later of 2009, I'm out with my mom. My mom picked me up and we went to the mall. We were going to get stuff at the mall, get food, and then she was going to go drop me off to go see the guy I was with. I had all these plans and everything. Okay, it was summer. Okay, so we're out. All of a sudden, my mom gets a call on her cell phone. It's the court. They're like, oh, where are you? They tell my mom, you need to stop what you're doing right now and bring your daughter to the court. And she's like, for what? There's no court date. There's nothing. They're like, no, you got to bring her right now. So my mom drives me to the courthouse and I'm like, what is this about? She's like, oh, they said you have to go. I'm just bringing you because they told me we have to. And I'm like, what the fuck? We go in there. The prosecutor, who's a woman prosecutor who I had never seen her before or talked to her before, and I didn't know who she was or anything. She was like, oh, you know, we need to talk to you. And I'm like, okay, like what's going on? And so like we're in the hallway. We didn't even go in front of the judge or nothing. And again, there's no court date. This is just like them calling my mom, like bring her to the courthouse right now. And so she's like, okay, well, she goes, here's the deal. You're not leaving this courthouse today with your mom. She goes, you have two choices. Either A, you're going to leave this courthouse today with DCF and stay in DCF foster care for the next 3 months till you turn 18. Or B, you're going to leave this courthouse today to go to prison, and you're going to stay in York Correctional Institute in Niantic, the women's prison, for the next 3 months till you turn 18. So which one do you pick? Prison or foster care? And like, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what kind of option is that? I'm like, I'm not going to that. I'm not going to foster care. I said, if you make me go back to foster care, I'm going to kill myself. The same thing I told DCF 2 years before. I said, no. As soon as they said foster care, I'm like, no, I'm not going back there. I had a bad experience there. She's like, okay, we'll let the judge know. We go in front of the judge when there was no court date, nothing scheduled. She says, oh, Your Honor, Miss Antar says that she's going to kill herself if she goes to foster care. And the judge goes, okay. And this was Judge Damiani, who then died like a few years later. And his daughter is currently a judge too. He goes, okay, well, based on that, I'm going to raise your bond, and I'm raising your bond to $5,000 cash only, but it can only be paid at your next court date, and it can only be paid at the next court date by somebody that the court approves, and your next court date's in 3 weeks from now. So in other words, translation, you're being held without bond, you're being held without bail for 3 weeks. Because I said I didn't want to go to a fucking foster home or prison. Now I'm in prison. For what? I was charged with the lowest fucking crime you could be charged with. I already bonded out of being arrested. Why are you putting me back in? I didn't even have court today. What kind of shit is this? So then, instead of going to do my plans with my friends and everything, I go to prison again. So I went back to Niantic. I'm supposed to be there for 3 weeks, and they're telling me I got to stay there for 3 months and then go back to court in 3 weeks to possibly get bonded out. And so I ended up having my younger sister, who's like 3.5 years younger, because like in jail, you can only call like certain approved, or at least at the time, you can only call like the people on your list and stuff. So the only like number on my list was like my mom's. And so I called her house and I was like, oh, I told my sister, like, I need you to type everything I'm telling you on the phone as I say it. And she did. And I told her what to type and to type a letter. And then I told her to fax that letter to the court, to the judge, because this public defender I had recommended that I did that. She said, well, if you want to ask the judge, try writing him a letter. What do you have to lose? So I did. And I said, like, you know, I don't belong in prison. I'm and not to mention, this Judge Damiani that did this to me is the same judge who was on my brother's case and the same judge who sentenced my brother to 5 years suspended, 5 years probation for the sex crimes, like literally a month before this. So like June of 2009, he sentences my brother. July of 2009, he puts me in prison for 5 days because I was supposed to be there for 3 weeks. And then after my sister faxed that letter, the judge called me to go immediately to court. So instead of me staying in jail for 3 weeks, I stayed in jail for 5 days. And then when I went to court, because I said in the letter, like, please let me have an ankle monitor, let me have a curfew, I'll do anything, just get me out of here. And they did. They let me, I didn't have an ankle monitor. They just put like a curfew, but it wasn't even like official. So it was like, there was like, it was just so stupid. Like no one could even know if I broke the curfew or not. But they just said like, basically I had to like 9 p.m. on the weekdays and 10 p.m. on the weekends until I turn 18. And if I don't get arrested again, then they'll dismiss all the charges and whatever, whatever, whatever. So I literally had like to be confined to my house for the rest of the summer from 9 and 10 p.m. But I would just have people come over and at parties, whatever. So that was crazy. Then as soon as I ended up doing like 5 days in prison again because like the judge was like, okay, you have court today. Okay, we're going to let you go. Now you're on this curfew. So like I did in 2009, 5 days in prison in January, 5 days in prison in July. And that experience where I was in a cell for 23 and a half hours a day was really torture. And they had so many human rights violations. And like now, like the threat of being put in jail again is the threat of staying there in Niantic indefinitely because they've already said that they're going to do the same thing and keep me without bail, make it so it's impossible to pay or make it so there's no bail at all like they did last time. So I have a lot of trauma about all this from getting arrested for simply like being a victim and like being in the wrong place at the wrong time and being associated with certain people and all this stuff. And so by the time I turned 18 that year, everything was wiped away. All that stuff was wiped away. I ended up getting arrested again a month later after I turned 18. This time I hired a lawyer, Angelica Papastavros, who's now a judge in the state of Connecticut. And she told me to do AR, which was a program where I did like an anger management class for like 9 weeks. And at the end of that, they granted me a full dismissal of charges. So she told me that it's like legally speaking as if I never got arrested. And so then I had a clean record from the age of 18 until the age of 30 something in 2022 when I was arrested again. And so back up a little bit. So basically like, you know, I ended up going to college. I got my bachelor's in political science. It was my dream to go to law school. My senior year of college, I ended up getting pregnant unexpectedly with a guy named Gerald who I met at a gas station. Him and his father were basically selling weed and I started getting it from him. And that's kind of how we met. And then I ended up seeing him for a while and then we started dating and I got pregnant really quick. Once I got pregnant, he wanted me to have an abortion. He already had a kid from another relationship. He didn't want any more responsibility, claimed he couldn't afford it, all this stuff. It was really a big like argument when I said I wanted to keep the baby. I remember we went to the first doctor's appointment. He was telling the doctor, I don't care. I don't need to hear the heartbeat. I don't need to look at the ultrasound. I've been through this before. I already know what it is. And so it's like, for me, it was like, it hurt, like knowing like, okay, you've been through this before, but I haven't. Like, I want to have somebody that like wants to hear the heartbeat and like wants to feel like this is something we're like excited about. And like, I was so scared and like alone and all that stuff. And I had tried to like cut my mom out of my life. But then as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I like went back to her because I felt like I needed some support, but it was always this like fake love where it's like this conditional love, like, oh, I'll only be there for you. But then as soon as you say or do something I don't like, you're done. You're nothing to me. You're dead to me. And then it's like, but then when you try to walk away from them, then they want to bring you back. Like, oh, I care about you. I miss you. And so I ended up having my daughter in 2014 and her father was physically abusive before, during, and after my pregnancy. And it was really hard. In 2016, he attacked me, strangled me, threatened to kill me right in front of my daughter. And that was like the final straw for me after multiple times when like neighbors would get called, and like I knew what happens when people get arrested for DV from everything I dealt with in the past. So like when neighbors would call the cops would come. Even if I had bruises on my face, they'd be like, "Oh, did you guys get in a physical altercation?" I'd say, "No, it was just verbal." "Oh, are you sure?" As they're looking at my bruises, and I'm like, "Yes, I'm sure." "Oh, what's the bruise on your face?" "Oh, I fell." And like I would never say, I would always protect him until the last time in 2016 when he did that in front of my daughter and literally threatened to kill me as he's choking me, saying, "I'm going to fucking kill you." I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I called the police the first time, and he was arrested. He was charged with strangulation and all these charges, and he pled guilty. He was on probation. He never did any jail time. And DCF was involved. They substantiated him for physical neglect against my daughter. They then, I went to court. I had a restraining order against him in the civil court, as well as a protective order in the criminal court that these protected me and my daughter. He was only allowed to have like limited interactions with me through a third party about scheduling visits, which had to be like, at my discretion and things like that. And so, I was able to then file for custody. I got sole legal and sole physical custody of my daughter. I started going back to work. I was able to get a job, and I was able to get help to put my daughter in daycare through a program called Care for Kids, where I was able to get help paying for daycare, where the state pays most of it. And I was getting like assistance and whatever I could get to like get by. Before I was depending on him. Until she was 18 months old, I was staying home with her. I wasn't working. I would if he was working at the gas station overnight, he would be like home with her napping, and I'd go out for a few hours doing Uber or doing nannying, where I would bring her with me. But none of those things were consistent, and none of those things were full time. Even nannying, if you can make $50 an hour, but you only get a couple hours a week, you can't live off that. So like I was depending on his money also. And like, even at the end, we were living in a house in East Haven that we rented, and it was like $1,300 a month. So like each of us were paying like $650 a month, plus we were splitting the bills. But like I wasn't making the kind of money he was, and I was still going 50-50 and taking 100% care of our daughter, while he would come home and he wouldn't do a single thing for her and get mad at me and attack me if I asked him to help me. And so it was really hard, like especially when you don't have family, and like, so many people have kids and they have like supportive families and stuff. And like, that is essential. So anyways, basically then, he violated the restraining order. He got arrested again. He got a felony conviction from that, but I maintained having sole custody. I put her in daycare. I got my own apartment in Naugatuck, which was in the ghetto, but it was like something I could afford by myself. It's like $700 a month. And my daughter was 1.5 still. And I was like, I need to buy a house. I need to get out of the situation. I started working as a assistant manager at Abercrombie and Fitch, Hollister. And I was only able to get that job because I had a college degree. That job gave me an okay salary plus benefits. Then I was able to get another job. I worked at Sherwin-Williams as a manager. That one was like almost double the salary of the other one. That salary at Sherwin-Williams got me qualified for a mortgage. I was able to get approved for an FHA loan and put down 3.5% on a house. And so in 2017, I bought a house in Orange. And that was when my daughter was 3. She was like, just turned 4. And like, before that, I was in this ghetto apartment. I was depending on my ex, all this stuff. And like, even times when we had nowhere to go. And like, when I lived with him and his dad threw us out. Then when it was mom threw us out. It's like, I was so proud of myself to get a place that was mine. And I remember I didn't tell anybody. And then one day I walked to my mom's house, and I went to my mom's house, and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Blah, blah. Cause she kept saying to me, "Oh, what are you going to do? You're going to have your daughter go to the bad schools, blah, 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 blah." And she would always constantly like compare me to my sister, who was married and had a house in Orange, and husband's family had money and all this stuff. And I was like, "Oh, I'll figure it out." And I kept looking. It took me like 18 months to buy the house because I kept looking. There was nothing in my price range. And I just, I didn't give up. I didn't want to settle. So then finally, I close on the house. I go to my mom's and she's like, oh, what are you doing? I was like, nothing. I'm like, I bought a house today. She's like, you did? Where? I was like, in Orange. And she literally starts crying. And she's like, oh, I'm so proud of you, this and that. That's really good. And like, that was like the only time she ever told me she was proud of me, like that I can remember. And like, my dad, like he never once in my life told me that he loved me. Like I've never had him say that ever. And I remember one time I asked him, I'm like, why? I called him and I said, I just want to know, why didn't you ever tell me that you loved me ever before? And he just stayed silent on the phone and didn't say a word. And for me, that was like worse than any answer he could have said, because it's like, you just realize that like, that the people that are supposed to love you unconditionally don't. And like that, they just don't love you at all. And like, you're just nothing but like a burden, somebody that they don't want to have to deal with and don't want to have to pay for and all that stuff. And so you just learn to like not believe in love anymore. And so, I feel like I didn't really experience what love was until I had my daughter and Juliana. And like, so we moved into the house. I had nothing. I was struggling, whatever. I tried to do my best, and I ended up then finally, after a couple of years, I get a job at a remodeling company called Casanova Remodeling. And so I start working as the office manager of this company and helping manage their other companies that the owner had too. And so the owner, John Casanova, was close friends with Matt Lodice and these other people, that they were all part of this all circle of friends, and they're all from Waterbury. And so Matt was a chef, and he then gets offered to go work for John, selling roofs and siding and selling remodeling work and getting paid strictly on commission. So I get offered the job. Like he starts working there like March of 2018. I start working there like April or May, like a month after him. And like, I was like the office manager staying at the office, and he was one of the sales guys. So like I had like a salary job. He was, out in the field and stuff. And so like, sometimes like I would see him, the other guys, I didn't really know him that well. One day we ended up working together at a fair, at a show that we were both assigned to. And then he ends up like getting me completely wasted, and we end up hooking up. And then it was like, we were still hooking up and stuff, but we weren't dating. And the next thing you know, a couple months later, I get pregnant. He has 2 kids from his ex-wife. And he was extremely mad when I got pregnant, and he wanted me to have an abortion 100%. He said it was going to ruin his kids' lives if I kept the baby, and that he couldn't do this to his boys and all this stuff. I end up keeping the baby. He's like, fine, I'm not going to stay with you, but I'll still help you and whatever. And then turned into like, after Angelina was born in 2019, like he agreed that he would pay for whatever she needed. And he said that, if like, he's like, after a while, he said, okay, because we weren't living together and stuff. And he said, like, I'll give you $100 a week for child support, plus anything that she needs, let me know and I'll buy it. So like, if I said like, she needs diapers, she needs wipes, she needs milk cups, she needs this, he would just order it on Amazon and buy it for me. Or he'd like put money in, like send me money, or put money in the joint account, or just directly order it. Plus he'd give me the 100 every week. Then he started saying, no, I'm not going to give this money unless you give me a blowjob. I'm not going to give this money unless you sleep with me. I'm not going to give the money unless you do this. And so it was like, then it was like using the money as like a way to like control me. So then I was like, fuck this. You're not going to give me the money. I'm going to just take you to court. So I took him to court for child support and custody. And even though at the time I was living in Orange and he was living in Waterbury, and I should not have filed in New Haven, I did file in New Haven because that's where my other case was, and that was close to my house, and I thought that that would be the proper court. Turns out it wasn't. It should have been Waterbury or Milford, but New Haven took in the case. So then, on the first day, it was just a child support hearing in front of the magistrate. And like, my boss had given a paper to the court saying that he pays Matt $65,000 a year in a salary. And then Matt was like, no, I'm an independent contractor. I work for myself. Look at my Schedule C. Even though I was paid 65 grand, after all my write-offs, my adjusted income is only 12 grand for the year. And then I pay 8 grand a year to my ex-wife in child support. So I only make 4 grand a year. So then the court was like, okay, we're only going to go by this number. And he has to give you like 30 a week in child support. And I was like, are you serious? Like, that's a joke. Like, I have proof that he makes more. I'm the manager. Here's his proof, blah, blah, blah. So then they're like, okay, we're going to schedule a special hearing. And then that was supposed to take place at a later date. Then 2 days later, we had another court date this time with the family court judge to talk about custody. And like, they can still make rulings on child support if they want. But usually if you're on like any type of assistance, like Husky, like Medicaid or food stamps or anything like that, they're supposed to handle it in the magistrate court. So anyways, the second time we went, it was like, he was all mad at me. He just wanted to argue, didn't want to agree to anything. And so then like during the lunch time, I said, okay, I'm going to try to work with him. So we went out to lunch together. I was like, can you please just agree with me? I was like, you were giving me 100 before a week. I was like, if you give me 120 a week, I promise I'll take $10 a week and put it in a savings for Angelina. He's like, okay, fine, but I want joint legal, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, fine, I'd rather just give you joint legal if I get primary custody, and then that's it. So like, then right after, like this was like November of 2019. By December of 2019, he's begging for me back. He's like, I don't care, I'll still pay child support, blah, 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 blah. Like, let's go to couples therapy, let's go to co-parenting therapy at the very least. And I was like, fine. And I wanted to be a family and I wanted to fix it. And so then like the therapy, we were doing that. Then he was telling me he wanted to be together. Then COVID happened. So then he gave me an ultimatum and he was like, either you quarantine with me or you're going to quarantine, or I'm going to go quarantine with my mom and I'm not going to go back and forth. So I was scared. I didn't know what to expect. I was like, fine, let's quarantine together. So from like March of 2020 through like June of 2020, he was with me. And it was horrible. Like every day he would like go outside and spend the whole day outside and like digging me a garden and doing all the stuff. And like, he'd only come in for me to like give him dinner and then he'd go right back out. And then it was like, we just hated each other. We were so sick of each other. And like, by June of 2020, we end up completely splitting. He goes back to his mom's. He then starts having an affair with a 19-year-old Jessica Maybeck from Shelton, Connecticut, she was working at the daycare Woodbridge Child Center. And I found out she was sleeping with him behind my back, taking my daughter home without my knowledge, lying to her boyfriend and saying that she was babysitting my daughter at my house when really she was at Matt's house fucking him, and lots of stuff. And then I found out she was sleeping with him behind my back. And I took my daughter out of that daycare. I kept my daughter out of daycare for almost a whole year after that, while I took her with me to work every day. I then put her in another daycare that was tiny but mighty that Alexis Stamos runs in Seymour. And that one, she ended up colluding with my ex afterwards and telling him all these lies, which he said under oath, that she said that even though she said the reason Angelina couldn't continue going there was because she needed a flu shot and we couldn't get it in time. She then allegedly told Matt, according to his testimony under penalty of perjury, that Angelina was kicked out because of me or because I was late or something, which is a fucking lie. And so it's like either Alexis lied or Matt lied. So whoever lied, it was stated under oath under penalty of perjury. And so this ended up then being used against me, where he's saying, oh, she took my daughter out of the daycare because she was mad I fucked the teacher. She took the daughter out of daycare because she was late, when really it was because we couldn't get the flu shot and because the doctor didn't have any. Like, so she's like, legally, I can't let her stay. I'll just let you end now and blah, blah, blah. So then it's like all this shit was happening. Then we get to like 2021. At the end of 2021, he stopped paying child support completely. He's like, I'm not going to pay. And he gave me an ultimatum because he opened up his remodeling company in like April of 2021. And he's like, listen, if you let me move back in with you, I'll pay you all your child support plus whatever you need, extra money, plus $50 a day guaranteed towards the bills, which would be $350 a week. So he was saying he's going to give me $350 plus $120, which is $470 a week, plus pay for everything if I let him move back in. And I said, no, I'm not letting you move in. I don't want to be with you. I realized he's a sick narcissist and that he'll never change. And I'm like, I'm not doing this with you. So then Anyways, he's like, fine, if you don't want to be back with me, I'm going to take you to court. I'm going to get sole custody of Angelina and you're going to pay me child support. And then he stopped paying child support. So then I filed to take him back to court. And that's when all this corruption started. And that's when I realized like he has friends, family, and lots of connections that work in the court that are judges, lawyers, correctional officers, state marshals, police commissioners, you name it. And so long story short, by 2022, we were back in court and it kept getting pushed along. I then hired this attorney, Don Cretella from Zingaro and Cretella, who was absolutely terrible and charged me 15 grand up front in a flat rate fee that said it was supposed to cover everything, including a trial, and said I could never lose custody and that he'd get all my child support that's owed to me and everything. And he ended up doing nothing, stole my money, and then was acting terrible to try to get me to fire him for months. And he said that he went to Quinnipiac with the judge and knows her. And so then by like October of 2022, we made the first disclosure because Angelina started like doing behaviors on her stuffed animals where she was like pumping them. And when I asked her at that time, what are you doing? She said, oh, my toy is tickling me. And I was like, well, does anyone else ever tickle you like that? And she said, yeah. And I said, who? She said, Sal and Dom, who are the two brothers from her dad, that when the dad had weekend visits, he would leave her alone with the brothers against my knowledge or will. And so then we reported it to DCF and the police. They sent her to Yale for a forensic interview where they asked her, do you have any private parts? And she said, no. They said, do you have any place on your body that no one else is allowed to touch? She said, no. So then they immediately closed the investigation. And this was with DCF and the New Britain Police Department, Detective Lisa Renee Steves. So the forensic interview took place October 31st, 2022. They stated at the Yale Child Advocacy Center that they're not allowed to ask leading questions and that they ask the same set of questions to all children between the ages of 3 through 17. So my daughter was asked, do you know why you're here? They said, no. She says, okay, if a child doesn't know why they're there, they're supposed to give a drawing of the human body. So she gives a drawing of the human body and asks my daughter to identify body parts, which she did. And then she said, is there anywhere in your body that no one else is allowed to touch? And my daughter said, no. So because she said no, she was then, the investigation was closed. It was labeled as no disclosure and the interview was ended. And then they said I had no choice but to keep sending her to her dad's house every week. So I continued to do that. Then February 1st, 2023, I go into my living room. I'm on the phone with my friend. I see she's humping her stuffed animal again. And this is the first time I saw her do that since October. So I'm like, I immediately hang up with my friend. I start recording. I go to the living room. I said, what are you doing? And she goes, oh, remember I told you that Dom does this to me all the time? Remember I told you Dom does this to me, as she's continuing to hump her stuffed animals. And I'm like, Dom does what to you? She's like, he does this, as she's continuing to pump the stuffed animals. And she's like, and he does it on the floor because Dada cleaned the floor. And she's like demonstrating. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I called the lawyer and they're like, oh, you should call DCF or the police again, whatever. And I did. And so then there was a second investigation, and that one had a forensic interview on March 3rd, 2023. And on that day, she disclosed in the forensic interview, and these records are in my chart, where she says, Dominic sits on me and has me sit on him, and he tickles my belly. And in these videos where she's doing it, she's saying, oh, I'm sitting on my toy like Dominic sits on me, as she humps it. And remember, she was 3. Her saying he's sitting on me and making me sit on him is her way of describing it in her words. But they said that even though that might be inappropriate, it's not criminal. Even though Dominic was 16 and she was 3, he was her caregiver watching her in a position of power. They said, oh no, if her pants were on, but she said her pants were pulled down and they were still on. So like, they just completely closed the investigation again. The detective never even once met my daughter. And now remember, when I was in an investigation, I was able to speak directly to the police and they were able to interview me and take my statement. That did not happen with my daughter. And so they insisted on outsourcing the investigations to Yale through these forensic interviews, which is bullshit. And this is part of their scheme that they're doing to traffic kids now. And so I caught on to all this pretty quick and they were like pissed off about it. So then as it's going on, my ex is plotting against me to try to get custody taken away. to try to allege that I'm lying about the sexual abuse. So then by May in March of 2023, after the second forensic interview, the DCF worker, Lorraine Plummer from Milford DCF, goes to my ex and says, oh, she did the forensic interview. There was no disclosure. She's allowed to be alone with Dominic now, even though the forensic interview just labeled the disclosure and also said that they recommend no unsupervised contact with Dominic moving forward. So they wanted no unsupervised contact with Dominic moving forward, but then the DCF goes and says, it's okay, let her stay alone with Dominic as much as you want. So then on March 10th, 2023, he goes to her school, he abducts her during nap time and steals her. I tried calling the police, everything, they wouldn't do anything about it. They said, oh, there's no disclosures, so therefore we're okay with her being alone with Dominic. And so then I file an emergency ex parte. It gets heard on March 27th, 2023. And the judge, Jane Grossman, says that I'm lying because I don't trust the dad, that I'm just making all this up because I don't like the dad, and that it's so obvious that I'm lying. She then orders that I am required to continue sending my daughter back to the dad, even though she's saying she's being sexually abused there. And then my lawyer says, if you don't start sending her back to the dad, you're going to go to jail. So with the threat of jail and losing my other daughter and everything else, I continue to comply. Then on May 23rd, 2023, my daughter, I go to bring her to school and she's telling me that her vagina and stomach hurts. So I call her pediatrician. I said, what should I do? Blah, blah, blah. They say, because of the history, you should take her to the ER so she could be swabbed and checked for everything. And they asked me, like, when's the last time she had a bath? I said, I don't know. I don't know if she had a bath before she came to me, but I haven't given her one since I had her. And they're like, okay, well, there's a chance that there might be DNA. It's very, very slim to none because it's past the window of time and you don't know if she had a bath, but just take her to the hospital, because if you take her here, all we can do is do a urine test for a UTI, but the hospital can do a thorough check. So like any mother, I listened to the doctor. I took her to Derby Hospital, Griffin, like they said. And then Griffin, while we're at Griffin, she's made disclosures saying that the sexual abuse happened days before that and that daddy said not to say anything and that daddy hit her and told her that she better listen or she's going to go right to bed. And that's something he says a lot. And so like, you know, they believed us. They then sent us to pediatric hospital in Hartford because they said that they didn't have the equipment there to do it. So I'm like canceled everything to spend my whole day with my daughter at the hospital, sleeping next to her in the hospital bed until 4 a.m. And they did do a DNA collection kit to try to see if there was any DNA, and they checked her for everything else. She also made a disclosure while she was at Hartford, Connecticut Children's Hospital to the PA named Michaela Lavoie, in which she said, Dominic is the one who does it to me. Michaela asked her while I was not in the room, has anyone, do you have private parts? And she says, Dominic's the one who does it to me. And mommy said, no one will be mad if I tell them, because she kept saying, they're going to be mad if I say it. They're going to be mad if I say it. And I was like, no one's going to be mad. It's okay. You can say it. And so like she was tortured and told not to talk. And so I'm trying to convince her, like, it's okay. It's okay. And so long story short, then like 2 days later, we go to court in New Haven Superior Court. The judge in the middle of the court date says that I bring up the sexual abuse. She accuses me of lying. She orders my daughter to immediately go into the custody of the dad. And she said, I'm going to have to be on supervised visits only if and when the dad says, supervised by somebody he controls, because she accused me of lying about the sexual abuse. She said we were going to come back to court in 1 week and that the order was temporary. But then she scheduled us for a court date for 3 weeks later, not 1 week. And then 5 days later, before that court date could even happen, she issues final orders saying that all the orders are final and that I could never file anything ever again, or else I need permission from the court prior to filing it. And so she basically blacklisted me. I tried to file appeals. I tried federal lawsuits. I tried all this stuff. And from May of 23 until March of 24, I had less than 3 days of total access with my daughter, Angelina, that were supervised. And it was like extremely hard. And the whole time I still maintained sole custody of Julianna. Meanwhile, during this whole time, like October of 23, he gets arrested for felony risk of injury for refusing to get her medical attention when she's screaming in pain, again, grabbing her private, saying it hurts. He gets arrested. The case magically gets dismissed within 90 days because he's a CI. Next, My daughter is continuing to say her butt hurts and everything during all the visits. My ex is saying she's not allowed to change her outfit. She's not allowed, like all this crazy stuff. And then nobody's protecting us. DCF won't do anything. The doctors won't do anything. I got arrested. I filed a big lawsuit in 2023, a RICO lawsuit. 6 days later, I get charged with a felony charge for going to get records from the pediatrician when the records show that sexual abuse happened. So it was just crazy. Then in March of 2024, I end up like taking my children, and we were not in the state of Connecticut because I'm trying to protect my children from this ongoing abuse. And so my ex then goes and files a missing persons report and says that Angelina is missing. They put a silver alert. They put her in an NCIC database. The cops track me down in Massachusetts. And at the time, the order that said I had to be on supervised visits was void and unenforceable because there was a juvenile case open. And in the state of Connecticut, if there's a juvenile case, the family court case must be stayed and the orders are unenforceable until the juvenile thing is done. So since we had a pending juvenile case to terminate his parental rights pending in juvenile, the family orders were not enforceable. And so I had all legal rights to her at the time. And under federal kidnapping laws, you have a duty, if you know that bringing your child back to that parent's house is going to result in harm, you have a duty to protect your child and not bring them back. And so federal law trumps state law all the time. And so I legally was within my legal right to do what I did. I didn't violate any laws. And then in Massachusetts, they don't participate in the UCCJEA. So any orders from Connecticut are not enforceable in Mass unless they're first domesticated in a Mass court, which didn't happen. So I was illegally detained at Logan Airport with both of my children when we were attempting to go on a flight to Aruba. They then said that Angelina had to come with them, but that me and Juliana were free to go. Angelina then started crying in front of the cops, saying that she had her butt hurts. I demanded medical attention. We go to Massachusetts General Hospital. I'm demanding to speak to a lawyer. They say, okay, both of my girls are in the room. They say, okay, if you want to talk to a lawyer, step into the room next door so that you don't talk in front of the kids. And so I did that. Talked to a lawyer for 5 minutes, come back, Angelina's gone. I said, Juliana, where is she? She says, oh, the doctor came in and said, someone's here to see you, and took her. So they waited until I wasn't looking, tricked me into going into the other room. And then as soon as I did, they grabbed her because they knew legally they would have to like get the courts involved and all that stuff. And legally they had no right to arrest me. They had no right to take my daughter, but they waited till I wasn't looking and stole her. And meanwhile, my ex drove 4 or 5 hours from Waterbury, Connecticut up to Boston to come get her. And then I never saw her again. That was March 7th, 2024. So then we go back to the airport to get our stuff, and there's no more flights. And Juliana still wanted to go to Aruba. So I called Delta and asked them if I could rebook it so that we cancel Angelina's ticket, get our money back, and move me and Juliana to leave out of JFK on March 9th. They did that. Apparently I got put on some watch list or something, and they saw that when I changed the tickets, it triggered something where Angelina's name got another ticket number. And so then, according to some report I read, which I don't know if it's BS or not, but according to this report, it said that Customs and Border Protection then contacted Waterbury PD saying that they wanted to make sure Angelina was with Matt and not with me on March 9th. And when he's like, oh, well, Gerald is supposed to have full custody of her right now. Because while we were detained in Logan, Gerald went to the New Haven court, filed an emergency ex parte saying he wanted custody. And he said that I tried to leave the country with my kids and that he wanted me to have full custody. He wanted him to have full custody. And the judge immediately granted it. But he didn't tell me about this. He didn't have me served. He didn't give the papers to a marshal. And I had no idea he did it. So when I'm over here trying to go to New York, to go to JFK, to go to Aruba with Juliana on the 9th, I'm thinking I still have sole custody of her. And we even talked to him the day before on the 8th. And he's like, oh, I want to talk to Juliana. Oh, and she's like, I'm going on vacation with mommy. And he's like, oh, where are you going? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And he goes, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. And then I texted him and I'm like, why would you tell her you're going to see her tomorrow? It's my weekend. And she just said we're going on vacation. He doesn't say a word. Like that would have been a great time to say, oh, yesterday I was granted sole custody. Yesterday I got emergency custody. And the order says that I can go get the kid. You didn't bother to get her because he had plans that day to go out with his fucking loser friend, Matt Royak, for his bachelor party that he was marrying Melissa Bagnoli. So yeah, that's what happened. He wanted to just wait to pick her up for the emergency custody because he wanted to go out and party on the Friday. So on Saturday, March 9th, when we're over here about to go to the airport and Border Patrol and all the police are looking for him, he'd never had me served. I still have sole custody. So then we get to the airport, we clear all security. We're at the gate about to go to Aruba, and I get detained by Port Authority police that says, well, there's an issue with custody. I said, what do you mean I have sole custody? I look in the computer, it says emergency ex parte granted March 7th. But I'm like, I didn't get served with this. I didn't even know this happened. They're like, well, you got to wait. We missed our flight, blah, blah, blah. Then they determined I was never served. And the cops are like, okay, well, we're going to serve you right now. And I'm like, you can't. The law says only a Connecticut marshal can. You can't serve me. They're like, too bad, we're serving you. Then I'm going back and forth. I live stream it on TikTok. It's like 500,000 views. Everybody's saying I'm terrible, this and that. Meanwhile, my daughter's all upset because I'm going back and forth with the cops. And then she's saying she doesn't want to come with me. They're like, it's okay. Do you want some candy? Trying to give her peanut M&Ms to lure her away. Lure her away. She willingly goes with them. They take her with no parent, no DCF, nothing. She's 9 years old. They steal her from me. And then after that, they're like, okay, well, you're free to go. You could do what you want. So I was like, are you kidding me? And so that was March 9th, 2024. I have not seen Juliana since. March 7th, 2024 was the last time I saw Angelina. Since then, I had been trying everything possible to try to get my kids back, try to get justice. And I've been blocked every step of the way in federal court, in state court, in the appellate court, in every single step of the way. They then, after that, tried to put out bogus warrants for my arrest, saying custodial interference, among other things, for trying to protect my children. Meanwhile, every other time when I tried to report Gerald or Matt for custodial interference when I had full custody, I was told it's a civil matter. And so it just goes to show you how, like, even getting arrested for calling the police, getting arrested for trying to go to your daughter's pediatrician to get records when there's nothing that says you can't. It's your legal right to do it. Like, when you get arrested for doing things you have a legal right to do, and when you are punished for like reporting abuse and things like that and lose your kids, like, this is just like a recipe for disaster. And so since then, I've been trying to deal with all of this trauma. I've been trying to like grow as a person. And all of this has affected me so much, whether it's with friendships, people I work with, relationships, people I'm interested in, no matter what, all of these things come out as trust issues and inability to like connect with people because you can't let your guard down because you're so used to being hurt that you don't ever think that anybody would want anything in a genuine way. And so it's just really hard. Like, it's not normal to go 2 years without seeing your kids. And now Angelina's dad, for now over 2 weeks now, has said that I'm never going to be allowed to talk to her again. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. That's kind of my story in a nutshell, and doing anything possible to try to take care of my kids. When I lost my kids, I was in law school. I did 2 years at the University of Connecticut School of Law. Been a notary since 2019 for the state of Connecticut. I have a certificate to practice law under supervision. I've done so much to try to help people, and starting this podcast and everything else to try to like show the world that this isn't something that's only happened to me, that I'm one of many people, that if you report sexual abuse, you'll lose your kids. And then it becomes so easy for them to criminalize you and retaliate and go against you if you do speak up. So if anybody listening can relate, wants to be a guest on the show, wants to share your story, or especially if you're from Connecticut, please reach out to me. And the best way to contact me is emailing me, prolegalsolutionsusa@gmail.com. Thank you guys for listening.